verwachting is dat de wedstrijd hier ongeveer 1 uur en 45, 46 minuten gaat duren. Terwijl u de startopstelling voorbij ziet komen. Opvallend natuurlijk toch die eerste pole position van Senna van dit jaar. Alain Prost zal gaan starten in de T-car. Prost heeft na de warm-up, waar het niet echt lekker ging, besloten om te kiezen voor zijn T-car. In de warm-up was Prost slechts 7e. En het is, zoals u weet, Prost zijn 199ste en laatste wedstrijd. Er zijn stemmen dat het toch zijn 200ste wedstrijd zou zijn. Maar we zijn bij iedereen geweest, inclusief de professor zelf. Hij zegt, ik hou het niet precies bij, maar vertrouw er maar op. Wat mijn sponsor vertelt is goed. Dus het is gewoon zijn 199ste race. Of hij ooit een 200ste zal rijden, er zijn heel veel vragen over. Prost zegt zelf dan weer in een blad van, ja, ik wil graag in de Formule 1 blijven. Nou, wat betekent dat dan? Ja, dat hij als manager graag terug wil komen ergens bij een team. Geruchten gaan dat hij misschien wel bij Ligier iets zal gaan doen. Ook het team van Williams wil hem houden. Ook Renault wil hem best wel houden. Want die man heeft natuurlijk ongelooflijk veel know-how opgebouwd in de periode dat hij gereden heeft. Stand op dit moment bij de rijders. En daar gaat het natuurlijk tussen die mannen die 2 en 3 staan. Hill en Senna. Schumacher heeft daar definitief voor afgehaakt. Voor wat betreft de stand bij de constructeurs is nog steeds de tweede plaats. Althans, daar is ook de tweede plaats nog open. Daar gaat het tussen McLaren en Benetton. En in beide gevallen lijkt Ayrton Senna hier toch het heft in handen te hebben. In beide gevallen denk ik dat hij toch in die laatste wedstrijd voor McLaren weer goed kan gaan scoren. Hij kan de tweede plaats in het kampioenschap voor de merken veiligstellen. En ik denk dat hij ook wel zijn eigen tweede plaats kan gaan pakken achter Alain Prost. U ziet rechts de tribunes niet helemaal vol. De plaatsen zijn nogal duur. En hier ziet u...
Only about 2 minutes to the start of the Australian Grand Prix, and what a marvellous sight those first 6 grid positions are. Ayrton Senna in his first ever pole position of 1993 in the super-fast McLaren Ford, which now matches the speed of Alain Prost, second on the grid. So we've got 7 world champions on the first 2 rows of the grid. 3 of them are Ayrton Senna and 4 of them are Alain Prost, followed by Damon Hill in 3rd position in his Williams Renault for his first Australian Grand Prix start. Michael Schumacher in the 4-wheel steering. Benetton is 4th on the grid. Mika Häkkinen, the young Finnish hot shoe, is only driving in his 3rd Grand Prix, 5th on the grid for McLaren. And Ferrari have gone extremely well in practice because Gerhard Berger starts 6th and Jean Alesi starts 7th. But who? Alan Jones, Australia's 1980 world champion, is going to be first into the S's.
Well, Murray, I'll have $1 on Ayrton Senna. He starts are spectacular. Alain Prost starts haven't been all that good. As I said before, if he has a weak link, it is his starts. You said before, if anything, it's not a bad habit, it's a good habit. He's so used to being kind on his equipment, he just can't bring himself to rev the hell out of the thing and just drop the clutch. And he's so used to being kind on the equipment, it's brought him undone many times at the start.
There is Prost, and he's sitting ice calm now. The parade lap is about to begin, and this is the one that caught Alain Prost and Damon Hill out in previous Grand Prix, and somebody's left. It looks like Mark Blundell has been left on the line. It's Martin Brundle. Martin Brundle has been left on the line, having worked so hard during practice. Now he's actually got away, and if he got away before the last driver on the line passed him, and it doesn't look to me as though he did, he would have been able to take up his place, but no, he has not succeeded. So poor Martin Brundle, having worked his heart out for 2 days to become the top passively suspended car driver in the Ligier Renault on the grid in 8th place, has now got to start 24th behind the Japanese driver Toshio Suzuki and Eric Comas in the LaRousse Lamborghinis.
It's very frustrating indeed. 2 days of hard work, planning, scheming, adjusting the car, getting the umpteenth little tenth of a second out of it, just to have it not start properly on the grid and now have to start at the rear of the grid. And of all circuits to do it on, this is probably one of the worst.
Let me remind you that when they come up to the grid, Ayrton Senna will be leading the field, the other 23 drivers up as slowly as he can. They haven't gone berserk, dodging and diving and weaving down the Sir Jack Brabham Straight. What a wonderful, wonderful picture that is. They are warming up their tyres by putting the maximum sideways load on them so that the treads are good and hot and they can maximise their grip at the start. They'll need plenty of grip because this circuit has been very slippery during the 2 one-hour qualifying sessions on Friday and Saturday. In the background, that was Jean-Marc Gounon in the white car, number 23. It's only his second Grand Prix drive. He's gone a lot better in practice for Adelaide than he did in Japan. But Senna will slowly lead the other 23 up to the start so that they spend the minimum time on the grid waiting for the lights to change from red to green to start the 81-lap Australian Grand Prix. There is Jean Alesi, number 27. Behind him, Riccardo Patrese. That is Aguri Suzuki. With the yellow band, it is Carl Wendlinger. That is J.J. Leto. Behind him is Rubens Barrichello. There is Mark Blundell. This is Andrea De Cesaris. There is Martini, Derek Warwick, Kokiyo Katayama, Eddie Irvine, Johnny Herbert. They're streaming through our lens. Toshio Suzuki, Jean-Marc Gounon, Pedro Lamy, the Portuguese driver. That is Suzuki, I'm sorry, and poor Martin Brundle. He must be fuming inside the cockpit, although, as Alan told you, he will have tried, like all the rest of them, to psych himself virtually to a standstill so that he's all cool for the start, and the green will follow the red 4 to 7 seconds later. This is a long hold. This is a very long hold. Somebody's waving his hands in the background, and it looks to me as though somebody's engine has stalled and they are holding the grid. You can see Martin Brundle as, yes, well, the visors go up. Well, this is an unfortunate start, but it's not nearly as unfortunate as somebody sitting stationary in his car with someone accelerating up behind him and not realising because he's unsighted and going into him.
Yes, it's a real anticlimax, and now the drivers have really got to bring themselves back down again and start all over again. The 5-minute board has been shown, but Murray, as you quite rightly said, there's not much room at this circuit. You really can't afford to have somebody crashing up the backside of somebody because you've only got to be about 4 or 5 rows further back, and you can still be up to a speed of 130, 125 mile an hour, and that can be a very nasty accident. So, in many respects, they've done the right thing, and let's go around again and get them all fired up.
Oh, they've done the right thing, no doubt. And this is a mega bonus for Martin Brundle, because the rules now allow his Ligier to be moved up from 24th on the grid to 8th. And he's going to be able to take up his correct starting position on qualifying. And it was Derek Warwick who, we think, stalled the engine. It was Derek Warwick who had the problem anyway.
So, behind every cloud?
There is a silver lining, and it's shining for, if silver linings can shine, it's shining for Martin Brundle. And I am unashamedly delighted for the South Wootton, which is where he comes from, driver. That's near Kings Lynn in England, because Martin is a lovely chap. I remember in his Formula 3 last year, racing against Ayrton Senna. It was very, very close for the British Formula 3 Championship that year, 1983, and Martin Brundle actually beat Senna 7 times in comparable equipment. So he has a very considerable talent, which he has not subsequently been able to exploit in notably the Zack-Speed and Brabham teams with Yamaha engines. And the race now, of course, as a result of Derek Warwick having stalled, is going to be over a reduced length of 80 laps instead of 81 laps of this 2.347 miles, 3.778 kilometre circuit. One or two people getting in a bit of a mess, somebody tripping over the electric starter trolley. We're looking with Damon Hill's car now.
Damon's fairly well placed. He's on the inside. He's although he's 3 or 2 cars back from Senna, if he does a really good start, he may be able to follow Senna through on the inside of Prost. So he's not that badly placed at all, and it does put him on the right side of the circuit going into the first chicane. And he has in the past done slightly better starts than Prost, so I think old Damon could be a bit of a dark horse here. Actually, his performance in practice was very impressive. He was quite quick this morning on full tanks, so he could very well be the man to watch out for.
Yes, Damon was saying to me earlier on that he's just going to watch points when the start happens. Alain Prost has similarly said that if he doesn't get into the first corner first, he's going to relax for a while, so far as you can relax in a Grand Prix, and wait till the fuel load goes down and then attack Ayrton Senna. But, of course, if he does that, he will have to be very careful that he hasn't long since said goodbye to the Brazilian, because Senna is a notable super starter. I expect him to be through the S's first, and then he will concentrate on building up, if he does get away quickly, a cushion between himself and whoever is following him. But it's not just Alain Prost and Damon Hill, it's Michael Schumacher, who was second fastest, and I think I owe Derek Warwick an apology. To be honest, I was concentrating on the front of the grid, and I've accused him of having stalled and stopped his car. It was indeed Ukio Katayama, the Japanese driver, and he's now having to start from the back. Katayama has been doing, as is his wont, and I don't mean this unkindly, a great deal of spinning here in Adelaide. He's got a lot of determination, but I think he's also got a lot to learn.
Yes, well, over exuberance and experience and talent, of course, you shouldn't get them confused. And this is a very difficult circuit, but we've had some very lucky drivers here, Murray. I mean, we've had a few good spins, and it's a circuit that normally doesn't really allow you to spin all that often without damaging the car, but we've had quite a few spins and surprising little damage.
You're looking at Katayama now, who's been demoted for his dereliction, if you like, and is now starting 24th on the grid, and a mightily relieved Martin Brundle back to his rightful position of 8th. Look at that, you can see the heat haze shimmering off the tarmac, and away they go.
Yes, a few thousand, multi-thousand of horsepower taking off down there, Murray.
Yeah, this of course is not the start, just in case you've got, and Katayama getting away. This is the parade lap again, and I say again, the Australian Grand Prix is going to be over 80 laps instead of 81 as a result of that aborted start. It will be no less demanding because the less experienced drivers will have tended to become a bit unsettled by having wound themselves up for the parade lap and then the start, only for it all to fizzle out, of the things to metaphorically go flat. Now they've got to psych themselves up again. Ayrton Senna leads down the straight ahead of Alain Prost, Damon Hill, Michael Schumacher in the yellow and green four-wheel steering Benetton. Gives me a chance, incidentally, to say that Benetton made the dramatic announcement yesterday that in 1994 they will be using a brand new Ford V8 engine, not the Renault engine that a lot of people thought they were trying to get. And that's got some extremely advanced technology, and they say the test results have been extremely encouraging. Martin Brundle dodging and diving there, celebrating his move back to 8th position on the grid. Eddie Irvine, that's a helmet you won't miss. Look how high Eddie Irvine's head is in the Jordan, and actually that is a big problem. He's got a long body and short legs, as a result of which his helmet actually sticks up into the air box and can reduce the amount of air that gets through to the engine and therefore reduce its power.
Also buffets the drive around quite a lot too, because the cockpits are designed to deflect the air either side of the helmet onto the rear wing, giving it its maximum amount of efficiency. And if the helmet does stick up into the airflow, it does create an enormous amount of buffeting for the driver.
So there is Irvine. You can see that the top of his helmet is blanking off the bottom of the air intake for the engine, which is the highest part of the coving. There's De Cesaris, Martini, Derek Warwick. That is Irvine.
Murray, the reason he's got an orange and green helmet, he says he's orange because he's Northern Ireland, and it's green to stop the IRA from shooting him.
Well, well, here is Irvine, and he is starting from 19th position on the 24-car grid. Let's hope they all get away this time. I remember in Austria once there were 4 full starts. That's the man with the green, and he's the man that decides that they are ready to go, to signal they are not ready to go for some reason. This is, I think, Alan, while we're all winding ourselves up and then feeling terribly deflated, it's an indication of how high the tension is on the starting grid.
Well, absolutely, and quite coincidentally, it's our man Eddie Irvine, the guy that we were just talking about, that is the culprit.
Yeah, he's missed his spot on the starting grid. Irvine should be, you see the white line behind his wheels. Irvine should be starting in 19th position, and he's stopped too far forward. Now, I must be quite honest with you and say that this is a precedent as far as I'm concerned. I'm not sure what the rules say. Whether they can...
Simply been an error on his part, but whatever it is, we're now back into having all the equipment being pushed back for the third time onto the grid. And in fact, I think we could think about including this activity as a new feature in the Olympic Games, which are going to be held in Sydney in the year 2000. It certainly would be the first time a motorsport event was part of the Olympic Games, and, well, pit crews are certainly getting enough training for that event in the year 2000.
So we saw Tim Wright, that's the race engineer of Eddie Irvine, who was telling him, like, yes, Eddie, you have to start at the back of the grid. I'm very sorry, but if anyone's a charger in this game, I think Eddie is definitely one of them.
Very successful as well.
Well, the start as he had in Japan was plenty exciting. He'll not be quite so much in focus in the early laps here, because starting at the back row of the grid is a long way from the focus of Ayrton Senna and Alain Prost, Michael Schumacher, Damon Hill, Mika Hakkinen and Gerhard Berger, and those front three rows are going to be fairly exciting. Remember, the charge down from the start line into that very tricky and very hazardous, let's call it that, left-right chicane is little more than 300 meters, and when people slow down for that, the concertina effect is in play.
Going to take a small break here on Eurosport, and we'll be back after that with hopefully some action from Adelaide. Be back in a sec.
Well, races, and Ken is obviously having a turn of four about something with Roland Brunscherider. You can tell from the expression on his face that Ken is not exactly best pleased about something. I don't know what it is, but you should be. I can hear Ken knows the rule book backwards, forwards, sideways, and every other direction. And he, of course, is the entrant for Akio Katayama, and I suspect that Ken is forming up and explaining in his usual gentle manner that Akio Katayama should not be at the back of the grid. He should be where he's supposed to start. And where he is supposed to start is in 18th position. And Roland Brunscherider, who's been through more crises than most of us, one way and another. Remember the crisis he had here in 1991 when we kept on seeing him form up in his weatherproofs to show us another 5-minute delay board because of the wet Australian Grand Prix. Sadly shakes his head at Ayrton, and Ken Tyrrell is now going up to see the stewards. He's climbing the magic stairs up to the steward's box, and he will be having an interview with them.
I would say that he's asking, why bring Martin Brundle up after a false start and not bring my man up? I would say, that's what he's bluing about. Why are you doing it for one and not for mine?
That is enormously perceptive of you, Alan. I've just been told that is the exact reason. That is what is happening. Ken Tyrrell is saying one rule for one person should mean the same rule for everybody else. And you're not applying it to my man. So if Martin Brundle has to start from the back, what's gone wrong?
And I've got to say he's right.
Say it again?
I would say he's right, too.
Yes, well, perhaps you better go and see the stewards as well.
I see him enough.
Now we're with Michael Schumacher, the German in the Benetton, who is fourth on the grid. And in front of him was Alain Prost. There is Prost silently going away first for the third parade lap, and for what will now be the 79-lap Australian Grand Prix. And of course, it just means that there are even more opportunities for things to go wrong on this parade lap. Eddie Irvine starting from the back now, I see.
What's important now is that Senna doesn't rush around. Of course, he's too experienced. He won't do that. He'll slow down towards three-quarter way through this lap and make sure that they all bunch up, because these cars are air-cooled. They don't have radiators or fans in them. And it's very important that he doesn't rush around at the start line and be sitting there unnecessarily longer than what he should be, because his car will overheat. Now, you can see he slowed right down, and he's giving all the guys behind him a chance to bunch right up, so when he does get to the front of the grid, he won't be there for a very great length of time.
So, first of all, Martin Brundle is demoted to the back of the grid, only to be returned to his place at the expense of Yukio Katayama, after which Ken Tyrrell complains to Roland Brunschreider and then the stewards. Meantime, Eddie Irvine has lined up in the wrong position, ahead of his 19th position grid start slot, as a result of which he is now starting 24th at the back. That is the story so far. Now, view on, as down the Sir Jack Brabham Straight for the third time on a parade lap go the dodging and diving, weaving cars. And if their tyres aren't warm by now, this is the third time they've done all this. They never will be. Irvine, a rather chastened 24th on the grid, and he is following Toshio Suzuki, the Japanese newcomer in his LaRouche Lamborghini. And we're looking back from pole position holder Ayrton Senna's McLaren Ford.
Apparently one of the reasons I've just been given is that Martin Brundle simply stalled, or was unable to get away in the original warm-up lap, and that's why he was able to come back into his normal position, whereas the other two deliberately misplaced themselves, and therefore, as a cause of that, was sent to the back of the grid.
I see. All right. Well, Martin Brundle is starting 8th. That's all he cares about. And ahead of him, John Alesi's Ferrari 7th, Gerhard Berger's Ferrari 6th, Mika Häkkinen's McLaren 5th, Michael Schumacher's Benetton 4th, Damon Hill's Williams, an excellent 3rd for his first race in Adelaide. In front of him, front row of the grid, on the left, number 2, 4 times world champion Alain Prost, and Ayrton Senna, pole position. Are we going to go this time? It is action in Australia. Looks to me as though they all get away, and Prost has actually got a good start, but not good enough, because Senna leads, Prost is 2nd, Hill is 3rd, Schumacher is 4th, Berger is 5th, and over our curb cam. That's what happened last year. We had spinners here last year. That's Pedro Lamy, and there's the course car coming through. Pedro Lamy has spun to a standstill, presumably as a result of impact through the S's on the first lap. Ayrton Senna has done exactly what he wanted to do. He's got a jump start, a meteoric start, and he leads Alain Prost. Pedro Lamy is the first retirement from the Australian Grand Prix. He's not going to complete a lap. Damon Hill is still 3rd. Michael Schumacher is still 4th. Here's a replay.
Well, a good start by Damon Hill, and not a bad start by Prost, but Damon just couldn't get in. Look, he's having a little bit of a look on the inside of Prost, decides to back off a little bit and let his team leader go through. Very wise now. That's Rubens Barrichello, who went over the grass at the left, as a result of which people moved to the right, as a result of which Pedro Lamy was offline, jumped the curb, ended up in the gravel and out of the Australian Grand Prix, which is now, I remind you, over a 79-lap race, and Lamy spins in front of the 2 LaRousses of Eric Comas and Toshio Suzuki. The race is coming through to complete the first lap. Senna, Prost. Oh, that's in a very dangerous position.
And they've got to move that car. The yellow flags are waving, of course, but are you going to see them under pressure, Alan?
Well, you will. There's 2 of them being waved, and if you're a professional Formula 1 racing driver and you don't see them, you should go to an optometrist. But at the end of the day, that's a very dangerous position, because if you shouldn't be passing anyway going into that situation, but if you went in a little bit too deep and went over the curb, you're going to T-bone that Lotus. It's a very nasty position.
Well, Martin Brundle, who must have thought his Australian Grand Prix had ended for the first start, is actually up from 8th to 6th. Senna leads, Prost is 2nd, Hill is 3rd, Schumacher is 4th, Berger is 5th, Brundle is ahead of Häkkinen and Alesi up into 6th place. Mika Häkkinen in the 2nd McLaren is in 7th position, Alesi is 8th, Suzuki. Zaguri Suzuki is 9th, Carl Wendlinger is 10th, Leto is 11th, Riccardo Patrese is in 12th position, notwithstanding the fact that he was 4th fastest in the warm-up this morning. and you watch Damon Hill, who I must say has mastered this Adelaide circuit remarkably quickly.
He certainly has. I mean, for the lack of experience he's had around here, he is going extremely well. But what about Senna? 1.3 second lead at the end of the second lap. I mean, that fantastic start.
Yes, just make a note of this if you can, that the lap record here is actually held by Michael Schumacher, 1 minute 16.078, and Ayrton Senna's first lap was 1 minute 20 seconds. And you can see he's doing exactly what I thought he would try to do, build a cushion between himself and Prost, because they're going to start lapping people. And Ayrton Senna got air-rated in the Japanese Grand Prix, you will remember, because he was being held up by Eddie Irvine and Damon Hill. And the gap between himself and Alain Prost, the man you are watching at the moment, came down from 30 seconds to 13 seconds as a result of Senna being held up, and he won't want that to happen here.
In the meantime, Damon Hill's coming under attack from Schumacher.
There they are in the background. Second is Alain Prost, and the young German is closing up on Damon Hill. I remind you that the Benetton has got four-wheel steering. That may prove to be a benefit here in Adelaide, because although it doesn't actually make the cars go around the corners any faster, Schumacher was telling me that it makes the car much easier to drive, much more relaxed and free-flowing. So in this race, which is going to be an hour and 45 minutes, that will help him.
Look at the difference of the Renault out of that hairpin there from the Ford. He gained about 2 or 3 car lengths coming into this chicane. But now, Schumacher brings it up back under braking. This will be the difference you see in the chassis now. They're coming to the bumpy braking area. Schumacher's up onto him under brakes. And now they're into the tight, twisty section, but you can see how that Renault does jump away under acceleration.
Up to the Markets turn, and then the right-hander at Stag turn, which leads into Jones Straight, down to the so-called Brewery Bend. They're past the Markets now, into the right-hander at Stag.
Schumacher went very deep wide.
Well, Schumacher's lost time and distance. There's one of the big diamond screens there, which are showing television pictures, and the drivers will be able to see themselves coming down the straight if they've got the inclination. But Ayrton Senna is now coming up towards 3 seconds ahead of Alain Prost, who is 1.6 seconds ahead of Damon Hill. You can see the gap as Michael Schumacher goes round in 4th position. Gerhard Berger's Ferrari is 5th, and Mika Häkkinen has passed Martin Brundle. The Finnish driver, Mika Häkkinen, is up to 6th place, and Jean Alesi is 8th behind Brundle.
Oh, I was just going to point out, you have a look at Schumacher's thumb. We've seen, he's being very aggressive. He's being very wildly with that wheel. But you'll see his thumb as he goes down through the chicane. Before he comes up to that next right-hander, you'll see his left thumb come over and press the button. That is a pre-programmed second gear. You'll see it shortly if we go back into the cockpit and have a look. Here's his thumb. He would have already done it by now, but there's a little green button just to the left of his thumb. They pre-program that it's a second gear. The computer says that when it gets to a certain amount of revs, all he has to do is press that button. When the car deaccelerates down to those revs, it automatically goes into second gear for him. So it's a great labour-saving device for the driver.
So now this is the Stag turn, and ahead of Michael Schumacher through his camera, you can see Damon Hill, who is now some 1.82 seconds ahead of the Benetton Ford, and those bars show the revs. The blue bar about 12,000 RPM flat out. The green bar is the accelerator position. You can see it's flat. The moving number, of course, are the gears, and Michael Schumacher changes those gears by flicking the levers of the semi-automatic gearbox, or they're even programmed into it to change automatically. And in kilometers an hour, the bottom numbers there are, and you can see, built 250 Ks around the corner, and they're coming through to complete the lap. Now, Senna was 2.8 seconds ahead of Alain Prost, and he's still 2.8 seconds ahead. And Prost, I say again, said that if he didn't get into the first corner first, he wasn't going to go raving mad at the beginning of the race. He was just going to play it cool. There's going to be tyre changes in this race for sure. There is a new Goodyear compound, a D compound, specially produced for Australia. That's the softest compound they've had this year, because the grip here is not necessarily of the best. All the drivers are using it, and we're expecting tyre stops round about lap 30, which, as ever, could change the complexion of the race.
Schumacher's posted the fastest lap of the race so far, an 18.466, but Prost is not far behind him with an 18.559, so they're really pouring it on.
Yes, and Senna is an 18.605, so it's very, very close. But you can see it's a battle between these four because Schumacher is pulling away from Gerhard Berger. There he is in 5th place. Berger has got the red and white McLaren of Mika Häkkinen, who finished 3rd in Japan, getting closer to him. And incidentally, Häkkinen is lapping faster, you're watching him now, than Gerhard Berger. Only a 1/10 of a second faster, admittedly, but 1/10 of a second over 10 laps is 1 second, and that's good.
Well, he can't afford to let the Ferrari get away. He wants to stay as close as he can, because when the fuel load comes down on the Ferrari, it will improve. It's obviously carrying a lot more fuel than the McLaren, and as a consequence, that'll be affecting his lap times. But if Mika lets him get too far away, when the fuel load comes down on the Ferrari, it will improve a lot quicker than what the McLaren will.
So Senna's the fastest so far, 1:18.321, and that is 2.3 seconds slower than Michael Schumacher's lap record last year in the Benetton Ford. And we're with Mika Häkkinen now in 6th position, with Gerhard Berger's Ferrari in front. So V8, and out of the race goes Jean-Marc Gounon in the... No, it's, I apologise, it's Martini, Pierluigi Martini, who is very much cruising in the Minardi Ford. And it's the last race for this team in that state because they are merging with the Scuderia Italia team next year. And it'll be a new team, still carrying the Minardi name and probably powered by Ford, but not necessarily. So, Hill is 3rd, Schumacher is 4th, that is the German. We are now on lap 7 out of 79, I remind you. No, we're on lap 8 out of 79, so it's 1/10 distance already. Senna is leading by nearly 3 seconds. Now, here is Häkkinen. He is in 6th position. How close to him is Jean Alesi. Mika Häkkinen is sandwiched between the two Ferraris now of Gerhard Berger 5th, Jean Alesi in 7th position. But nobody knows the McLaren better than Mika Häkkinen, including Ayrton Senna.
Well, that's right. I mean, he's been a test driver for them. He knows the ins and outs of this car, probably, as you say quite rightly, better than Senna. At the end of the day, though, Senna's experience, he knows exactly how much to wring out of this car. When is the right time to go? When is the right time to slow down to conserve tyres? I would say Senna is not in cruise mode. He's just putting in some very fierce laps. He's building up a lead, and if need be, a little bit later on, he can put that to good use.
And if Senna won, it's a long, long way to go yet, of course, but it would be his 5th Grand Prix victory of 1993, and that was something we certainly did not expect to see at the beginning of the season, when a lot of people, including, I must sadly admit myself, did not expect the McLaren 4 to go nearly as well as it has. But the Wizards from Woking have just chipped away at the Renault-Williams advantage over the year. They've improved the aerodynamics, Ford have improved the engine, Cosworth of course, and the package has been getting better and better, and a lot of it is down to this man, number 7, Mika Häkkinen, who has done thousands and thousands of test miles, not in competition, longing for the opportunity to get into the fray, which he did in Portugal. And you're watching Ayrton Senna, race leader, and retirements already are Pedro Lamy in the Lotus and Pierluigi Martini in the Minardi. 22 left out of the 24 starters, and we're on lap 9, almost at the end of it.
Quite interesting, Alain Prost has just posted the fastest lap of the race, so he might have decided that he's ready to have a go.
Yeah, if you were in this position, or if you were in Alain's position, it's a good question to ask you as an ex-Williams driver of great distinction, Alan. When would you decide that it was time to stop watching Senna pull away and try to reel him in?
Well, I think as long as he sticks within a respectable distance behind, and he can't afford to let him get too far away. That's what you don't do. But if he sticks where he is now, looks after brakes and tyres, I would have a really major go about 8 or 9 laps before I was due to come in to put the old fresh set of tyres on. That's when I'd have a go, because then if you did abuse them, you know that you're coming in 7 or 8 laps later to put a new set on anyway.
Well, that would be round about lap 20, and we are now on lap 10 out of 79. Ayrton Senna has just posted the first under 1 minute 18 seconds lap, 1 minute 17.95. He's increased his lead over Alain Prost to 3.1 seconds. Doesn't look like it on the monitor, but that's what it is in time. Damon Hill is 3 seconds behind Prost. Schumacher is 1 second behind Hill. Berger is 11 seconds behind Schumacher. Hakkinen is 1.5 seconds in 6th position behind Gerhard Berger. Alesi is 7th. Brundle is 8th. Suzuki is 9th. Wendlinger is in 10th position ahead of JJ Leto, Riccardo Patrese, Mark Blundell and Englishman Johnny Herbert, who is 14th, ahead of Derek Warwick, 15th. And this is the battle for 3rd position. We're looking back from Damon Hill's Williams-Renault at the flying Benetton Ford of the mercurial Michael Schumacher.
Schumacher's really trying too. You saw the back of his car slide out, then he was on the power a little bit earlier than Damon was, and he's really having a major go.
Second in 1992, Michael Schumacher, a fine drive. And Gerhard Berger, of course, was the winner last year. You will recall that Ayrton Senna and Nigel Mansell had a terrific scrap for 17 laps until they took each other out at Foster's hairpin on the 18th lap, and it was there was a big argument about whose fault it was. But as far as Riccardo Patrese was concerned, he wasn't over-bothered because he went into the lead with Gerhard Berger as close to him as Senna had been to Mansell. But then out went Riccardo Patrese with a broken fuel pump, and Gerhard Berger won from Michael Schumacher.
Just looking at that picture before, Schumacher seems to have a lot of oil over the front of his car and over the front of his helmet. Now that might indicate that Damon Hill's losing a little bit too much fluid. Doesn't look all right, but there seems to be a lot of fluid over the front of Schumacher's car. Now I just hope that that's not going to be the downfall of Damon Hill, but he is quite an untidy helmet. Of course, that's why they do wear the rip-offs, because when they become too dirty, they can just literally rip them off, and they've got a clean visor to look through. But he seems to be gaining on Damon quite comfortably.
And from Michael Schumacher's camera, you saw Johnny Herbert touring into the pits, presumably to retire from his last Grand Prix of 1993. And I don't think, yes, there he is, coming into the pits, and I don't think Lotus are going to be sorry to see 1993 over. Their extremely advanced but very complicated active suspension system has given an enormous amount of trouble this season, and next year, like everybody else, they're going to have to revert to the simpler, less complicated passive suspension system, and that'll mean a lot less things to go wrong. So, with Senna leading on lap 12, Prost is second, Damon Hill is in 3rd position, Martin Brundle is in 8th position, his teammate Mark Blundell is 13th, Derek Warwick is in 14th position, and then in 22nd position was Johnny Herbert, but he is out of the race at the moment. As they come through, here's a replay, and that's off goes Eddie Irvine, and that's the end of his 2nd Grand Prix, I think. Maybe he's going to be able to back out. He's got a lot of muck on the tyres, but he chose a good place to go off if he had to go off, because he's pretty near the pits.
Yes, he just went in too quick. The car understeered, it lost front end traction, and he just drove straight in. Well, here he is, he's back in the pit, so hopefully, for his sake, they can throw another... Oh, no, we've got signalling that it's all over. That's a shame.
That means that something is damaged in the car irreparably, perhaps one of the suspension elements, and Eddie Irvine joins Pierluigi Martini out of the race. And we're on lap 13 now. Senna is consolidating his lead. This Brazilian really is something else. He's now 4.7 seconds ahead of Alain Prost. And it must be starting to become a bit discouraging for the 4 times world champion from France, Alain Prost, because Senna is just pulling away. He was nearly a second faster on that lap. Alain Prost is settling down to a steady 2nd position, and that's Katayama disappearing out of the picture. And at Stag Turn, well, Katayama has been announced as re-signing for Tyrrell with the Yamaha Japanese engine in 1994. And I think probably a mixed blessing as far as Ken is concerned, because Katayama must have cost the Tyrrell team a lot of money in broken parts this year.
Yes, but being of his nationality, he might have also been responsible for having the Yamaha there as well.
Yes, I think that could well be the case. And so now on lap 14, Ayrton Senna leads Alain Prost by over 5 seconds. I've said before that Ayrton Senna is probably the most complete driver package of all time. He's not only a superb driver, that's the battle for third position, Hill and Schumacher, but Ayrton Senna is a consummate politician. He's fantastically good on the money side of the business. Nobody does a better deal than him, absolutely nobody, with the possible exception of Nigel Mansell, who's no longer in Formula One. And Senna, whatever aspect of Formula One you're looking at, takes a great deal of beating.
Eddie Irvine is out with suspension problems, and that's not entirely surprising, because I guess to hit the wall that quickly is a fairly good ask to be able to reverse it out and continue on with your Grand Prix. These cars are actually designed where it's a perfect opportunity to tell you now, as you look at the front right-hand suspension of what was Damon Hill's car, now it's the front left-hand suspension of Schumacher's car. These are designed not only to go up and down and to suspend the monocoque, but they're also in a funny way designed to fly off without damaging anything if you do have a major accident. So if you do hit the wall as hard as Irvine has done, it's not entirely surprising that you can bend them.
So Pedro Lamy is out in the Lotus, Pierluigi Martini is out in the Minardi, Okio Katayama is out in the Tyrrell, very bent Tyrrell. Johnny Herbert has been into the pits and come out again, and the race is what you're looking at now. It's the race for third position between 0, Damon Hill, and number 5, the number that Mansell used to carry until this year, and that, of course, is Michael Schumacher. Mika Häkkinen is in 5th position, Gerhard Berger is 6th, Jean Alesi, his Ferrari teammate, is 7th, ahead of Martin Brundle, 8th. 9th is Aguri Suzuki, 10th is Carl Wendlinger, 11th is JJ Leto, so the two Saubers are together again, as they have been so often this season. Riccardo Patrese, a rather forlorn 12th position in the Benetton, and into the pits comes Michael Schumacher. Now, this was earlier than I expected. This is the end of the 15th lap.
Now, this is interesting.
That is Kenny Hankamer on the front of the car. He's lifted the wheels off the ground. There he is. He gets out of the way, and that is a good tire stop.
4.81 seconds. That is a ripper stop.
Yeah, so that means to say that Michael Schumacher has decided, I reckon what he said to himself was, I can't get past Damon Hill on the track. What I'm going to do is to come in early, take on fresh rubber, get better grip, and hope that Damon Hill, when he comes into the pits, takes a longer time to stop, and I will be able to pass him in the pits, as it were.
Well, I think you're probably spot on. And also, there's a distinct possibility that they will be making 2 stops. So he can now, on fresh rubber, really get in and have a go. Damon's rubber will be going off, so this is going to be a very interesting situation.
Well, we don't know. Benetton are always unpredictable with tyre stops. Sometimes they've gone through without making any stops at all and done well out of it. Other times they have stopped twice and done well out of it. There's a good tyre tactician in the Benetton team. Lap 16 out of 79. Ayrton Senna leading. Alain Prost in 2nd position. Damon Hill in 3rd place, 3 seconds behind his team leader. There is Hill in 4th position. I'm just waiting for the 4th position man to come through now. And that's Gounod, who is being passed by Damon Hill. Jean-Marc Gounod, the ex-Formula 3000 driver of France, who Alan and I were talking to each other about him. It staggered both of us that he got a lot of money to get into Formula 1, but didn't get fit.
Well, you go to all that effort and all that running around to secure sponsorship and all that talking to get your bum into the seat, and then you don't go to the trouble to get yourself fit enough to take advantage of it.
Well, Michael Schumacher is still 4th. It looks like a good move. All right, he's 13.8 seconds behind Damon Hill, but he's got a tyre stop behind him. He's on fresh rubber. He's still in front of Mika Häkkinen, who is 5th. Gerhard Berger is in 6th position. 7th is Alesi. He's only a second or so behind Gerhard Berger. In 8th position is Brundle. 9th is Aguri Suzuki, who's lasted longer in Australia than he has in a lot of Grand Prix this year. 10th and 11th and 12th, Wendlinger, Leto and Patrese. And we're riding with Damon Hill, who's had there's the battle between the Ferraris that I was just talking about. And number 27 is Jean Alesi. Blue flags being waved at, I suspect, Gerhard Berger to tell him that Jean Alesi is behind him. I don't think Gerhard will need telling, because the Austrian has driven in nearly 150 Grand Prix. And incidentally, the elbow problem that he's had so much this season is greatly improved here. So, Berger and Alesi. And there is no question, Alain, of Alesi deferring to Berger just because he also is in a Ferrari.
No way. I would think that, and that's interesting, Schumacher has now obviously posted the fastest lap of the race on that fresh rubber, not entirely surprising. No, I mean, Alesi, the last race of the year, they're going into the off-season, and you want to go in there being able to say to the boss, well, look, I knocked off my teammate in the last race, so maybe give me a bit more testing or take a bit notice of what I want for the car for next year. So it's fairly important.
Well, Schumacher on fresh rubber has closed the gap between himself and third-placed Damon Hill by 2 seconds. It's down from 13 to 11. We're on lap 20. Senna is now only 2.8 seconds ahead of Prost. Prost has gone a second quicker on this previous lap. Now, I can't tell you why, because I, like you, have been concentrating on this battle between Berger and Alesi. But believe you me, we, Alan Jones and I, are going to keep a very close eye on that gap between race leader Ayrton Senna and second place Alain Prost, because I remember Prost saying to me, I'm going to wait until the fuel load starts to go down a bit and charge. And I remember you, Alan, saying round about lap 20 is when I would make my push. There's Senna, and he's lapped De Cesaris.
Well, I mean, he's the ultimate tactician, Prost. We know that. I mean, he not only can drive a car very, very quickly around any given circuit in the world, but he's a great thinking driver. And so, of course, is Senna. So you've got the two best tacticians in Formula One having a go. But you can see a visible distance now that he's caught up to him.
Yes, I think actually a lot of it may be due to the traffic, because you can see that Senna has already lapped Toshio Suzuki in the LaRousse, who is in 19th position. Alain Prost has done the same thing and has got Andrea De Cesaris in front of him. Good luck, Alain, as he comes out of the right-hander at the end of the lap, up to Andrea De Cesaris. Prost will be pushing hard to get past here.
Yeah, well, he couldn't have caught him at a worse place, of course, because now he's going to lose time through the chicane. He must get past him before the right-hander coming up here, which he will indeed under brakes, because that would have cost him a heap of time.
And Andrea De Cesaris, using all his experience, politely and sensibly moves over and lets Prost through. That, of course, is what Ayrton Senna was moaning about with Irvine in Japan. He was saying Irvine is inexperienced, I was a lap behind him, I was leading the race, and he was more involved in fighting with Damon Hill for 6th position than letting me, the race leader, through.
Well, that's true. I mean, there are different schools of thought on that, of course. I mean, backmarkers are entitled to have their race as much as the leaders are. But I think there is, you do have to realise that when the guys are coming up to lap you, particularly if there is a race for the lead going on, you've got to be a bit sensible and move over and let them get on with it. But it's interesting to know that Alain lost about 3/4 of a second then.
And Jean Alesi has moved past Gerhard Berger, and that is Michael Schumacher out of the Australian Grand Prix after that superb charge of his. As he went out in Japan, so he's gone out at the end of the Jones Straight. And that means to say that Mika Hakkinen moves up into 4th position, and poor Michael Schumacher's efforts in the last 2 races of the year have brought him a couple of zeros in terms of achievement.
Well, just before that, he was lapping some nearly 2 seconds a lap. We can see some, I think that's a brake problem, or it looks like they haven't put a wheel on properly when he came in for those new tyres, because it looks to be leaning over a little bit more than what it should, and it almost looks like there's something binding up or been rubbing on the disc, and that's what's causing that smoke.
Yes, I think Schumacher will now go away and have the knee operation that he's been wanting for some time now, because he has a knee problem inside the cockpit of the car, which prevents him from training as much as he would like to. It just means that compared with anybody else, he's just super fit instead of unbelievably fit. But Ayrton Senna still leads on lap 21. by 4 seconds now, because they're clear of the traffic, and it was indeed that was delaying the Brazilian. And you're watching push, Jean Alesi in the Ferrari. And we've got news from the pit lane, Barry Sheen.
Yeah, Murray, I've just spoken to the Benetton guys, and apparently the engine blew up. I would be pretty much sure that within the next couple of laps that Senna's going to come in, because there's a lot of action going over. I can see Ron Dennis was talking and gesticulating, so I wouldn't be at all surprised if Senna comes in. And the word is that as soon as Senna comes in, Prost is going to follow him. Back to you, Murray.
Thank you, Barry Sheen, Britain's double motorcycle world champion, now living in Australia, helping us in the pit lane. And that news figures, because if Ayrton Senna comes in, Alain Prost would be unwise to stay out any longer.
Yes, well, I mean, it all depends on the lap times, but there is a cat and mouse situation going on here at the moment. McLaren's normally can do a slightly quicker pit stop than the Williams camp can do, but they would be monitoring one another, and for sure, if Senna comes in, Frank will drag in Prost immediately also, I would imagine.
And then it will be down to who is quickest in the pit lane. Does Prost get away cleanly? We've seen him have problems get away from the pits after a tyre stop in previous races this year. And on lap 22 out of 79, with the pit stops starting, the tyre stop starting, Senna is 3.5 seconds ahead of Prost, who is now 6.5 seconds ahead of Hill, who is 18 seconds ahead of Senna. And there's Gounod doing what he did in Japan. This driver really is too inexperienced in Formula One. To be fair to him, he hasn't had any testing time because of the time in the season he's come in and the fact that Minardi have got no money. But it really does question whether he's right to be here. And into the pits comes Hill. Here is Hill. He's stopping for tyres before Alain Prost. Now, I remind you that under 5 seconds is the target. Oh, well, I mean, if I could change 4 tyres and wheels in 6.41 seconds, I would think I was a genius. But you can see that Häkkinen has now closed right up. That is Mika Häkkinen in the red and white McLaren. He's in 4th place behind Damon Hill, and into the pit lane. Now it's all happening because here is Gerhard Berger. And Ferrari are usually very good. Well, that's not very good by their standards. I was saying if I could change tyres in about 6 seconds, I would think I was a genius. But you really do have to do better than that in Formula One.
Well, that's exactly right. It's all relevant. By Formula One standards now, 4.5 seconds is a really good stop, and anything under 5 is acceptable. Anything over 5 is slow.
So Berger rejoins in 8th position with J.J. Leto behind him in the Sauber, Carl Wendlinger behind him, and Riccardo Patrese in 10th position behind Wendlinger. And that is Ayrton Senna, and he's coming up to lap the LaRousse, which moves over and lets him through. And you can see that Prost now is closing. The traffic is helping Prost on this occasion. That's not usually the case, but Prost is now under 3 seconds behind Ayrton Senna on lap 24 out of 79.
Well, Prost now really should pour it on. He must realise that it's going to be any old lap. In fact, my guess is that Senna will be in on the next lap. But I think Prost now has to realise that, and he has to get as close to Senna as he possibly can to make sure that he doesn't lose anything in this pit stop.
And that fact won't be lost on Alain Prost. He's passed Eric Comas, one of who drives in spectacles. And Mika Häkkinen has got past Damon Hill. Mika Häkkinen has moved up into 3rd position. So the McLaren Fords are 1st and 3rd, just as they were in Japan, sandwiching Alain Prost just as they did in Japan. And that is Häkkinen, followed by Damon Hill. So, Mika Häkkinen, who's shown so much promise and who was bursting to get into Grand Prix racing while he was held as test driver for McLaren, is showing his style again as Riccardo Patrese leaves the pits. He came in 12th and he's now headed, and Senna is in. This is race leader Ayrton Senna. Now, and they've done it again. The McLaren team have done it again. That's a lovely stop, 5.3 seconds. Now, Alain Prost is going to be coming in, I'm sure, on the next lap. Well, Senna looks as though he's in a strong position at the present moment because he's come in, he's taken on those tyres. We are now on lap 25, which is
I think we'll see Damon Hill now have a go back at Häkkinen, because Häkkinen got... it's not entirely surprising that Häkkinen got past him. His tyres were really up to race temperature. Damon went out on relatively cold tyres, even though they had been in warmers. Häkkinen took advantage of that, but Häkkinen is still to make a pit stop, and now Damon's tyres are coming up to good operating temperature. I think he'll be very nasty in a second.
Damon is indeed a chip off the old block. Father Graham, he is a racer, and look at him going for it. Fourth position behind Mika Häkkinen, McLaren versus Williams, Ford versus Renault, Finn versus Englishman, and it is that close. Lap 25. And behind these two, Jean Alesi is fifth, Aguri Suzuki is sixth, Burberry seventh, and Hill tries again at racetrack hairpin. That's where Senna passed Mansell last year, ran wide, and Mansell immediately retook him.
The danger there, Murray, is that all you need is for Häkkinen to come across your bows and his right rear tyre clip your front left-hand one, and you're possibly both out. So Damon really... he locked his brake. It's a good chance for Damon.
What do you say to yourself, Alan, when you see that tyre smoke from the car?
He's on the inside. He should, with a little bit of luck, be able to get him through here. Yeah.
Oh, lovely. Clean and incisive. Damon Hill goes back to third position. Demotes Mika Häkkinen, and Alain Prost leads the Australian Grand Prix by 9 seconds from Ayrton Senna, who has changed tyres.
Well, that pass that you saw going into the chicane was a result of what happened at the corner beforehand. Häkkinen went in a little bit too deep, locked up his brakes, retarded his speed a little bit too much, made a very untidy exit, and Damon was able to take full advantage of that, get a better run out, and put himself in the position to go on the inside in the chicane.
Well, I hope for his sake that Alain Prost is not... Oh, there's somebody going off. It's Derek Warwick up onto the curb at Brewery Bend. A lot of people have done that in the past.
Oh.
The underbody skids over the curb, and Derek recovers. Now, that takes a lot of doing. Now, I'm saying, I hope that Alain Prost, for his sake, hasn't left things too late. He's 9 seconds ahead of Senna, but a complete pit stop, including coming in, getting out, and speeding up again, takes about 13 to 15 seconds, which could mean that Senna's effectively in the lead. In fact, he's cutting into Prost's gap. I think Prost is leaving it too late, because he's now 7.7 seconds ahead of Senna. In comes Mika Häkkinen, fourth position. He's obviously decided, like Schumacher did earlier on, that he can't pass the man in the front on the track, so he's going to try and do it in the pit lane.
What Prost has done, he's realised that Senna has come in. Prost has stayed out for another couple of laps, because a couple of laps is probably what it would take for Senna's tyres to get up to proper working temperature. Alain's taken advantage of that. I predict he'll be in the next lap, or if not, the one after for sure.
I think he needs to. Lap 27, Prost leads Senna by 7.8 seconds. Hill is third, 17 seconds behind Senna. Häkkinen is 14 seconds behind Hill, having changed tyres. Häkkinen. Alesi is fifth. Suzuki in the footwork is in the points at sixth, ahead of Gerhard Berger's Ferrari, seventh. Carl Wendlinger's Sauber, eighth. Martin Brundle is ninth in the Ligier. Derek Warwick was 10th, but after that spin will have lost places. I think Nato will have gone up into 10th position. We're now on lap 28. And now this is indeed interesting, Alan, because Alain Prost, who has not changed tyres, and Senna, who has, are lapping within a tenth of a second the same time as each other.
Well, the Williams camp will be monitoring this very, very closely indeed. The minute that Senna consistently runs 0.3, 0.4 of a second quicker than Prost, they'll let him know, and then he'll be straight in for tyres. If he can be doing the same sort of speed as Senna now, he'll probably stay out there. But for mine, the minute the times become equal, I'd be in like a flash.
Why shouldn't he come in now? Well, we don't know the answer to that question. Prost is staying out. Senna is 7.5 seconds behind him. Damon Hill is 20 seconds behind in third position. And there's a battle in this race that neither of us have mentioned yet. It is the battle for second place in the World Championship, which at the present moment is held by Damon Hill, just 2 points ahead of Senna. And Damon Hill's personal target here in Australia is to finish ahead of Senna and thereby clinch second place in the World Championship in his first year with a real team. Alain Prost is now coming up behind Riccardo Patrese, who is 11th in the Benetton. That's where he went off in practice, Patrese. Alain Prost, race leader, looking to lap Patrese, who is lapping a lot slower than him, but not that much slower in terms of holding things up. And Prost will now be worrying about the fact that Senna, who's probably got a clear track, will be able to close on him.
Well, maybe now is the time he should come in, because if he has dropped a second or so on one particular lap because of a back marker, then he should say, all right, I'll go into the pits now and whack some new tyres on. You see, he's not making too much of a mark on Patrese, so really I think he should really come in now.
Yeah, there's Senna in the background. You see, that doesn't look like 7 seconds to me. Now, is Patrese going to let Prost in? No, he's not. They shall not pass. Meantime, Senna is in second position, grasping his opportunity. He has got a clear track in front of him. The next man ahead is Prost, who still hasn't got past Riccardo Patrese, and the veteran Italian could be helping Ayrton Senna. And it's lap 29. Prost must surely come in this time. Prost leads. Prost is in. Here he is. Now, he was leading by 7 seconds. And Senna, of course, will go through into the lead again. Absolutely no doubt about that. In fact, it has happened. And the Williams have... Well, Prost has lost a lot of time. He's lost 2 seconds. Because I can't remember Senna's time exactly, but it was of the order of 5 seconds. And again, whatever the team discipline and drill is in terms of tyre changing, McLaren have again shown that they are superior to Williams. And Alain Prost has lost another 2 seconds.
He just went a little bit wide then. You can see the tyres are a little bit cold. He's gone into that corner much the same speed as what he's been used to for the last 30-odd laps, and just run a little bit wide into it. But you really cannot afford to give 2 seconds away in a pit stop. I mean, 2 seconds in Formula One is like leaping.
Lap 30 out of 79. Senna leads, Prost second, Hill third, and Lacey is in fourth position in the Ferrari. And if that stays reliable, they'll both be in the points, because Gerhard Berger is sixth and the Suzuki is in fifth position. And into the pits comes Mika Häkkinen. The hydraulic lift, the front, takes the front wheels off the ground. This looks like a too leisurely task. This isn't just tyres. This isn't just tyres. Look at the way the seconds are ticking away, and there's something on the left rear.
I'd say it's a drive problem. He's obviously heard a noise, or it's handling a bit strange. They're looking at that back left hand, whether it be a disc or a pad or a drive shaft, but it's not boding well for Mika,
who was in 11th position, and I think we're going to be seeing the Finn sadly emerging from the cockpit. He's obviously having a discussion and saying, I want to go on, and they're saying, well, you can't. I don't know what the dialogue is any more than you do. But the fact that he's been there as long as he has indicates to me that, well, his race is over effectively anyway, because short of mass retirements in front of him, Mika isn't going to be going anywhere in Australia in terms of race results. The worried eyes of the Finn look out from his helmet. His teammate, race leader, Ayrton Senna, is now on his 31st lap as the work continues on the rear of Mika's McLaren Ford. Here is Senna. He's now 14.7 seconds ahead of Prost. So it was indeed a false dawn for Alain Prost when Senna came in, took on tyres. Prost took the lead.
Senna's going to be looking for is as much clear air as possible. Very shortly he's going to catch up to Riccardo Patrese, and then he's got the 2 Saibers ahead of that, so those are not going to be easy cars to pass. Senna's going to have to use all his wisdom in a car to make sure that he can get past in parts of the circuit where he's got an advantage, but not get delayed. And round here, for example, almost impossible to pass.
John, Damon Hill is currently the fastest driver on the circuit. Ayrton Senna is doing an 18.1, Alain Prost an 18.4, Damon Hill a 17.6. So maybe we should have a look at Damon Hill being the dark horse at this moment. But having said that, there's a long way to go. It's very hot, and we've seen quite a few mechanical retirements.
Typical of Adelaide. Everybody's tired when they come here. Sometimes some of the equipment that teams use isn't as fresh as they would have at the start of a season. And there we are, looking all the way back down the Brabham Straight. Mark Blundell, Derek Warwick, and there Alain Prost in second place, 15 seconds behind the race leader, Ayrton Senna.
Of course, Damon Hill's out there to prove a point, John, that he's basically just as quick as Alain Prost. Which he is at the moment. He is 4.2 seconds behind, but he's a little quicker. 18.0 for Ayrton Senna, and I'm a little bit disappointed with those lap times. When Schumacher went out on his new set after the pit stop, he did that 17.0, which is still a second off his best that he put down last year, but they're not getting close, are they?
Well, as I said, when Senna made his stop for fresh tyres, he got caught in traffic, and those initial 3 or 4 laps when the tyre is at its best, the advantage that he had with those tyres was lost in traffic. So now he's back to a much more stable position, and you're not going to see the kind of electric lap that you saw from Michael Schumacher after his very early stop.
Now the gap between Senna and Prost is coming down slowly, but it's got to come down much quicker for Alain to do something serious about.
Yes, but remember that it's Riccardo Patrese who's immediately ahead of Senna, not in terms of position, but just on the road, and that is not an easy car to pass. In terms of straight line performance, very little in it. In fact, this morning, if you...
Prost. Now this is paddock turn, or was the left-hander, into Foster's hairpin, and we're on lap 34. And as Prost crosses the line, the gap is 1 minute 13.2, but Senna is in traffic and Prost is lapping nearly 2 seconds faster at the moment, which means to say that he's closing the gap. You can see that Damon Hill is only about 3 seconds behind his team leader, number 2, Alain Prost. Hill in 3rd place.
And Damon Hill is in fact lapping quicker than Prost. He's just to the tune of some half a second, so great stuff this.
Yeah, and Damon Hill has just gone round just 1 second off Schumacher's 1992 lap record, and he is starting to threaten Alain Prost, from whom he admits he's learned a heck of a lot this year, but there is no question of Damon Hill deferring to Alain Prost any more than there was any question of Jean Alesi in the Ferrari deferring to Gerhard Berger, his teammate. Damon Hill will want to finish ahead of Prost just as much as Prost wants to finish ahead of Damon Hill. And as you look inside the cockpit of Damon Hill's Williams-Brenner, you will see a white light appearing every so often at the top inside. There it is. That is the rev limiter coming into action, which restricts the revs of the engine and puts on the light and tells him when to change gear. And we've got news from Barry Sheene in the pit lane.
Murray, I had a look at when they took the wheel off of Häkkinen's car. The reason he's come in was there was fluid leaking from the rear caliper. It looked like the feed to the caliper on the left rear had broken. So there was no way of fixing it, so he definitely won't be out.
Thank you for that, Barry Sheene. And we've just been riding with Gerhard Berger, who's having a scrap with Aguri Suzuki, who is driving in the Australian Grand Prix like he's never driven before. He's finished in the points only once in his career, and he's going jolly well here. There is the Japanese driver. He's had a 3rd place in his home race in Japan. And Gerhard Berger goes through in 5th place. Right behind him in the footwork, in the white car, number 10, is Aguri Suzuki. In 7th position, almost in the points, is Martin Brundle in the newly liveried Ligier, and you just saw him come round the left-hander there. It's a pretty close thing between Berger, Suzuki and Brundle. In fact, 5 seconds covers those 3 places, 5th, 6th and 7th. With Senna leading, Prost 2nd, Hill in 3rd position, and we're riding with Hill now as he comes up to one of the... There's Damon Hill, and there's only 1.8 seconds now between him and Alain Prost. Damon Hill has taken another 7/10 of a second out of his team leader's advantage, and you can see Prost going round the left-hander. And ahead of us is, I think it is Derek Warwick, because we've seen...
It's a footwork Mugen, and I tell you what, it's not shying horsepower out of the corner either. I mean, you don't pop away from a Renault that easy. Look at that. It's
and it is Derek Warwick.
Particularly with a barn door of a wing on the back.
Who is in 12th position, Derek Warwick, and Damon Hill is trying to lap him. Derek Warwick's got his own problems, and that's maintaining his speed, but I would expect Derek to move over and let Damon Hill through, because he knows that Hill is lapping him, and like the experienced, polite Grand Prix driver that he is, Derek Warwick does just that. But Damon Hill was 1.8 seconds behind Prost. Prost second, Hill third. Has he lost any time as a result of trying to get past? Well, he hasn't lost all that much, because you can see Alain Prost going through Foster's hairpin in front of him. Senna leads 13 seconds now between him and Prost. There is the lead up, and he's on his 37th lap now out of 79. Of course, rhythm is the name of the game in Grand Prix racing, maintaining your racing rhythm.
Well, it's extremely important on any circuit in these cars. They are so twitchy, so pointy, so agile. And even on the fast open circuits, it's extremely important. But on these very closed circuits, the street circuits of Monaco and here in Australia, you have to be very, very smooth. You have to feed the power, and although, mind you, half the field now helps a bit with the computer in that department. But smoothness is what it really is all about with these very powerful cars.
And Senna coming up to lap JJ Leto, who is ninth in the Sauber, who politely takes his hand off the steering wheel, points to the right, which means pass me on my right, and Senna does exactly that. And incidentally, as Prost and Hill pull out to pass Marc Blundell in the Ligier Renault, they are absolutely together. I wonder, and this is no disrespect to Damon Hill, but either Prost is tiring, or we know Damon Hill is charging, and he's certainly carving into the Frenchman's lead over him. Senna's in front of both of them.
Well, I think Alain Prost has done enough Grand Prix in his life not to be tiring. I would think that he's driving as well as he possibly can. I just think Damon Hill is driving better at this stage.
Yes, here, and Damon is performing magnificently at Adelaide, as he has all through practice, and we should not forget that it's the first time that he's driven in Australia. It was the first time he had driven in Suzuka 2 weeks ago, when he finished in 4th position, and he found that a very difficult circuit to master, as everybody does. Adelaide is easier, and Damon Hill has taken to it like a duck to water, and look what he's doing to the 4-time world champion Alain Prost on lap 38. Senna leading by 13 points. Hill is third behind Prost. Alesi in the Ferrari is in 4th position, and that's a spinner. That's Gounod again.
Oh, maybe again.
Yeah, I really think that Gounod is not up to it, and I hope he's now retiring. Berger is in 5th position. Martin Brundle is in the points, and getting closer and closer to Gerhard Berger. Suzuki is down to 7th position, because Martin Brundle in the Ligier has moved up into the 6th position ahead of Aguri Suzuki, the Japanese driver. In 8th position is Wendlinger, 9th is Leto, 10th is Patrese, 11th is Blundell, and in 12th position, Derek Warwick. Oh, this is great. Williams Renault versus Williams Renault. Alain Prost in his 199th Grand Prix versus Damon Hill, and he is only in his 18th Grand Prix. 2 of them last year in the Brabham, and I don't mean this unkindly, can hardly count, because it was certainly not a race-winning car. So Damon, in his first real Grand Prix season, has had this magnificent success of 3 wins and 4 second places. As I said, he's second in the championship, but the man who is only 2 points behind him in the championship is 2 places ahead of him in the race, Ayrton Senna, lap 39. And more news from Barry Sheene in the pits.
Yeah, thanks, Murray. I just had a word with the Williams guys. There's no problems with Prost. The only problems they said was he's moaning about the traffic and the fact that he wants to look after his tyres. So maybe we know how canny Prost is. He's just saving his tyres for the end of the race.
I love that remark, Alan. Alain Prost is moaning about the traffic. I mean, to me, it's inconceivable that somebody can drive at the speed that he's driving and still have a dispassionate conversation with his team. Do you wish you had had radio in your day?
No, I'm rather glad I didn't, actually. But, I mean, I can only really comment that it's the same traffic for Damon as it is for Prost, and he's got the same tyres as Damon's got, so I'm sure Damon wants to look after his tyres as well.
Yeah, and they're coming up to lap. Andrea De Cesaris, number 4 in the Tyrrell Yamaha, who is in 15th position, and they're coming up to lap him for the second time. Past goes Prost, And through the S's round...
He didn't need that. Well, he just lost about maybe half to a second then, because Prost was able to get through on the inside with the sweeper and have a nice clean ride through the right-hander and exit onto the straight, and Damon just got balked slightly. So all that good work that he's made up over the last lap or so, he'll have to try and get back now.
Now, we've been watching Prost and Hill, but meantime, Ayrton Senna's lead has been reduced because, believe it or not, both the Williams are actually lapping a second quicker, and there's the reason, you see. Senna just completes the lap ahead of Aguri Suzuki, and behind Suzuki, who is in 7th place, is Wendlinger and Leto. So Senna's had to scrabble his way past Suzuki, Leto, Wendlinger and Comas there, who has been lapped twice. And that's a problem that's going to face Alain Prost and Damon Hill shortly. Senna's lead is now just under 9 seconds. Prost and Hill are thinking of each other. They're also thinking of the traffic. Prost is up to Comas now. Comas, who is double lapped in 14th place, passed by Alain Prost. And Alain Prost has been accused in the past of not being very good in traffic. He's not doing very badly at the moment.
No, he's doing very well, but the master in traffic has always been Senna, of course. He just double guesses the opponent in front of him. He sees a gap and he goes for it. The major problem Damon's got as well is when you've got two cars travelling this closely together and you're coming up to lap a guy, he looks in the mirror, he sees one Williams. He pulls over, lets it go through, and then resumes his racing line. And if you're very close behind him, of course, he's going to inadvertently chop you up. So it's something that Damon really has to watch out for.
Right, well, we're with Prost now. Going to be his opportunity as he comes out of the hairpin, and he goes by. Oh, sorry, we're with Hill now, my apologies. And retirements from the Australian Grand Prix: Katayama, Schumacher, Mika Hakkinen, Pedro Lamy and Eddie Irvine. Gounon came into the pits and has just spun, and we think is out, and Pierluigi Martini is out.
Well, see, Damon's actually lost quite a lot in that lap. You had to go around the outside of the chap around that quick right-hander, which really would have meant that he would have to have buttoned off considerably as to what would have been a flat-out corner, and he's dropped now maybe a second to a second and a half back.
Two Williams in the top 6, Prost and Hill, 2nd and 3rd, fighting each other behind Ayrton Senna, ahead of Sean Alesi's Ferrari, who is in 4th position, 23 seconds behind Hill, and 16 seconds ahead of the 2nd Ferrari of Gerhard Berger, which is in 5th place. In 6th position, a long way back now, but in 6th position in the points, Martin Brundle, 8.5 seconds behind Berger. 7th and lapped is Wendlinger, 8th and lapped is Suzuki, 9th is Leto in the 2nd Sauber, 10th is Riccardo Patrese, not a very good Australian Grand Prix for him. 11th Mark Blundell in the 2nd Ligier, Derek Warwick is 12th in the 2nd Footwork, and Ayrton Senna, that we are riding with, is now on his 43rd lap, coming up to the right-hander at Flinders Bend, past the packed house veranda into the left-hander at East Terrace Bend, round the right-hander again at Flinders, into East Terrace, underneath the bridge, into the left-hander at Markets Turn. There's the Markets in front, which are being redeveloped with the old facade. Stag Turn, the right-hander, leads into Jones Straight, and this is 150 miles an hour to Brewery Bend, slow down to about 95, up into 6th gear, build up to about 300k, and that's about 180 miles an hour. Hard on the brakes again, from 6th to 2nd for racetrack hairpin. Senna leads. And all the corporate hospitality boxes on the left, having a good time. The only pity is that the sun is not shining as much as we've seen in Australia in the past, but on the other hand, it isn't wet,
well, exactly, Mary. I was just about to say, but hang on, at least it's not raining.
Right. Past the packed grandstand, to complete his 43rd lap, goes Ayrton Senna. What is the left to say about this man and his incredible achievements? 3 times world champion, he's won 4 Grand Prix already this year. That superb victory in Brazil and the even better one in Donington. So both of those in the wet, and then that magnificent victory in Monaco, a record 6th win for him. Then there was a fairly barren period for the McLaren team while they patiently set about improving their chassis, and Cosworth set about improving the Ford engine, and it worked because Ayrton Senna won in Japan to close within 2 points of Damon Hill, second in the championship. And if Senna stays where he is, he's not only going to have his 5th victory, but hey, look at this, because there is Carl Wendlinger 7th, behind him Suzuki, who is 8th, and Leto, who is in 9th position, and coming through them all is the Williams Renault. So they've been passed by Senna, and now Prost has got the same problem, and Senna's 12-second gap will inevitably increase. Senna will be more than 12 seconds ahead of Alain Prost at the end of this lap, I'm pretty sure. Senna has gone through, Prost goes through now, and it's actually 13.3 seconds. There's the Frenchman. And he's coming up to Suzuki, in for a second tyre stop. Comes Damon Hill. Tactics or necessity, do you think, Alan?
I would say tactics, Murray. I would say they've probably planned this in advance. He's now going... that was not a bad stop, I suppose, by Williams standards, but he's still blown 2 seconds compared to a very good McLaren one, or at least a second and a half. But now this is really going to be interesting, because Damon knows that this is going to be his last change, and he's still in 3rd position, and he will now be giving it his utmost.
Yeah, and he's about, at a guess, about 15 seconds behind Alain Prost. But we'll soon see. Damon Hill is taken some time to get to the position that he's in now, because the Englishman is 33 years old, and that is exactly the same age as Ayrton Senna. But Senna had the advantage of the Brazilian money behind him. Damon's had, like Senna for that matter, to fight his way up through Formula Ford, Formula 3, Formula 3000 in Damon Hill's case, which Senna never drove in. Damon Hill got his chance at the end of last season, was taken on by Williams. A much criticised move from some people who thought that he hadn't got the experience and wasn't good enough, but how very wrong they have been proved, because he had those incredible 3 successive victories in Hungary, Belgium and Italy, having previously lost the British and German Grand Prix by the hardest of luck, with an engine failure and a tyre failure. And Damon Hill has been signed again by Williams, and justifiably so, for 1994. We're with Riccardo Patrese now, who is in 10th position. And ahead of him is the Sauber of JJ Leto. This, as I said earlier on, may well be Riccardo Patrese's last Grand Prix. There are stories that he's going to be driving for Alfa Romeo in the British Touring Car Championship, 2-litre car championship next year. And that would be something to see, because Riccardo is an enormously experienced and very capable racing car driver. And in the hands of Nicola Larini, the Alfa Romeo has won the German Touring Car Championship, and their entry in Britain would be very welcome with Riccardo at the wheel. But meantime, Ayrton Senna goes through on his 47th lap, 15 seconds ahead of Alain Prost. Comfortable, do you think, Alan?
Yes, I think he's pretty much controlling the race. I see the Williams pits are getting ready for a stop, and also the McLaren pits are getting ready for a stop. So, once again, the cat and mouse. But the thing is, Ayrton really has an enormous advantage, because even if the McLaren pits, you know, lose 3 or 4 seconds, he has got that in hand. He has earned that. So, I mean, he's in a really good position.
And Ayrton Senna has a virtually non-stop conversation with the pits. Where am I? How far ahead of the man behind me am I? Am I coming up to somebody in front? He thinks all the time, and you saw the McLaren mechanics in the pit lane ready to change tyres. Well, they're certainly not changing tyres for Mika Häkkinen. He has long since disappeared from the Australian Grand Prix. They're waiting for this man, Ayrton Senna, to come into the pit lane. And he keeps going. He's through the S's for another lap. He's on his 48th lap now.
Oh, we have a marshal there that lost his hat. And, very gamely went out to retrieve it. What could be interesting is now that Damon Hill is on his second set of tyres. They're well and truly up to working. He's about 18 seconds or maybe a little bit more behind than Senna. Senna is coming in for a stop. It's going to cost him a little bit of time for his deacceleration, the acceleration time. He has to go out onto working temperature. Now, Hill is about 20-odd seconds behind Senna. Senna is really going gangbusters now to try and extend that lead because he knows he's going to come in for some tyres. He's doing very quick laps in the low 17s and 17.0s. Damon's doing sort of 18s at the moment, but when Ayrton comes in for a new set of tyres and comes back out, Damon will be a lot closer to him, and that could be a very interesting part of the race.
We will soon see the development of that, we hope, as we watch Ayrton Senna, knowing that I can see out of my window the McLaren mechanics. They're standing by their tyres and wheels. And yet again, Ayrton Senna goes through, so they may be ready, but he's not. You see, as Alan Jones has said earlier on, while the lap times are satisfactory and are not increasing, there's really no need for anybody to come in. And if you come in, it's not just the fact that you lose time, and Alain Prost is going to demonstrate that now. It's the possibility that something could go wrong in the pits, that the car could drop off the jack, that the wheel could stick, all sorts of things can go wrong, which can make the situation even worse. Happily for Alain Prost, nothing went wrong, although 6.92 seconds these days is nothing to write letters about saying how well you've done.
Well, it was 6.92 when they actually dropped him on the ground, but he also lost a little split seconds getting away. He almost stalled it.
So now are we going to see Damon Hill up there again? And I remind you that two of the stars who started this race, Michael Schumacher and Mika Häkkinen, are out because Michael Schumacher went out as early as lap 15 when he had a problem. Mika Häkkinen went out on lap 26, and running now in Australia, out of the 24 who started, there are 16 left, so 8 retirements. Ayrton Senna is the fastest so far with a lap time of 1 minute 17.04, and that is about 1.4 seconds off Schumacher's time. And there you see Prost and Hill together battling for second again.
Yes, Murray, I might take this opportunity while we're on the Williams to have a look at the rear wing, such as the wind tunnel work that these people do. I was asking the other day, why don't they put the return, that is the wicker bill or the gurney flap or whatever you want to call it, it's a little bit of return metal on the top of the rear wing. Why don't they run it the full width across the rear wing? Here, we're looking at it now on the right-hand top of the wing. And they said, well, by running it right across the wing, it does give you more downforce, but it also gives you more drag. And by leaving a little space between where it ends to the end of the wing is the best compromise between drag and downforce. And that, in modern Formula One racing, that could mean only half a mile and half a kilometre an hour and 1 kilometre down the straight, but that's the degree they're getting. You can see on the bottom and as on the top, they actually stop the gurney flap about 6 inches before it gets to the end of the wing.
And the downforce from the wings of these cars is such, it weighs about 2 tons of downforce, and if you could get the car up there and drive it fast enough, you could literally drive it upside down at about 60 miles an hour and it would stay on the surface that it was on. That's how much downforce they produce. And because of that, of course, the suspension has to be very, very stiff indeed. And that's why active suspension is such a benefit, and they're losing it at the end of this year. But meantime, Prost is starting to get into danger of losing his second position. Ayrton Senna's got no problem. He's on his 51st lap out of 79. The Australian Grand Prix is starting to draw to a close. Alain Prost is 33 seconds behind the Brazilian, although he's lapping some 1.5 seconds quicker at the moment. Damon Hill is the fastest man on the circuit. He's just gone round only half a second slower. That 1:16.595 compares with Schumacher's 1:16.078 lap record from last year. Damon Hill is the man to watch at the moment. Third place ahead of Alesi, who is in 4th position. Gerhard Berger is 5th in the second Ferrari. Martin Brundle is in 6th position. Wendlinger is 7th. Suzuki is 8th. Leto is in 9th place. Patrese is 10th. Blundell is 11th. Derek Warwick is in 12th position. Then Barrichello 13th, Comas 14th, De Cesaris is in 15th. And he is in the Tyrrell, and it really now looks sadly as though Tyrrell are going to be the only constructors team, apart from Lola, who are not here, who are not going to have scored any Constructors' World Championship points in 1993. So, Riccardo Patrese in for more tyres, and he comes in from 10th position, and that means to say that Mark Blundell will almost certainly move up as Patrese exits after a nice clean... Yeah, there's Blundell right behind him. Patrese is now in a situation where he could be losing 10th position to Blundell, because Patrese is on cold tyres, Blundell is on very warm ones, and Hill is back pressing 16.115. That's 1/10 of a second off the lap record. There is the battle between Mark Blundell. Now it's all hotting up. Into the pits comes Gerhard Berger, 5th position in the Ferrari, but Martin Brundle is 27 seconds behind him. So Gerhard Berger should get out, and he does so, still in 5th position. He's had a 3rd and a 4th this year, and 3 6th positions. Not the best of seasons for Gerhard Berger, who after all won here in Adelaide last year and in 1987. And he rejoins ahead of the multi-lapped Andrea De Cesaris, the only Tyrrell Yamaha left in the race after Okio Katayama retired earlier on, somewhat forcibly. And we're on lap 53. 6 laps to go. And Damon Hill has just broken the lap record. Superb. 1 minute 16.078. He is really on a charge to try to displace Alain Prost from 2nd position.
Well, Murray, you can bet your life that Ron Dennis has just passed that on to Ayrton Senna, and Ayrton Senna will be saying to himself, right, time for me to come in and get some new rubber.
Yes, and I have actually, I'm sorry to say, maligned Schumacher. Damon Hill has actually equalled the lap record to the nearest 1,000th of a second. But the way he's going now, I have little doubt that he will improve on it, because he can see the target, he's got the incentive, and he must be hoping that something happens to Ayrton Senna, because if something happens to Ayrton Senna and he can get past Alain Prost, he could make it a 4th win in 1993 for the popular Englishman, which on top of the 3 that he's already got and the 2 that he might have had in Britain, Germany, not to mention the 1 in Spain that escaped him, would be a quite incredible achievement. Prost is now behind JJ Leto, and this will give, no doubt about it, Damon Hill the opportunity to close right up on Prost, because I don't think Leto is going to let the Frenchman through here.
Well, now, if he couldn't have got past Leto before that right hand, he really needed to do that. Now Leto will hold him up. I know, he's going to hold him up through this, and that'll give Damon the chance to get right up on him.
Yeah, and if Prost doesn't time it right, and he has timed it right, and Damon Hill follows him through magnificently. I think that was a good bit of driving by JJ, actually, Alan, because I think he saw them both.
Yeah.
So, this is the battle. Number 2, multi-world champion, 4 times, Alain Prost, chased by comparative newcomer, his teammate Damon Hill. Prost has won 7 times this year. Damon Hill has won 3 times. Between them, they've taken the Williams team to victory in the Constructors' World Championship, and they both go inside a tail ender at racetrack hairpin into Paddock Bend, the fast left-hander, which leads into the kink to the right after they've crossed the Victoria Park racecourse, down to Foster's hairpin, the slowest corner on the course. And Damon Hill is getting close enough fairly soon. He needs to have his front wing right underneath the rear wing of Alain Prost Williams to stand a chance of passing the Frenchman, but he's getting closer.
Well, what he does need to do is to place himself in a position behind Prost, coming through the right-hander on a Sir Jack Brabham straight. Just about this, maybe a little bit closer than this. Have a good run through that right-hander so he can take advantage of a toe down the straight and pull up under brakes to get him through the right-hand hairpin at the end of the straight. Senna really should be coming in the second, because he is losing almost 0.7 to a second per lap, so he needs to come in any lap.
And look at this from our steady cam in the helicopter, which gives us a wonderful picture looking down on the cars as they enter the Sir Jack Brabham Straight, the fastest part of it.
He was too far back. He needed to be a lot. Here comes Senna in the pits now.
He's got a 29-second lead. He can take all the time in the world over this. Nice and easy. McLaren don't need to bother about a 5-second stop, but even though they don't need to bother, they get one. I think that's the quickest tyre stop we've had. So McLaren operate quickest tyre stop we've had here in Australia today, and they operate just as well under pressure as under more relaxed conditions. And Ayrton Senna now on his 56th lap, as up to Suzuki, who is in 8th place in the footwork Mugen and desperately anxious to keep it and concentrate on where he's going. This is giving Damon Hill another opportunity. We're with Hill now. Prost is second ahead of him. Aguri Suzuki in the footwork. Mugen is ahead of Prost. And the Japanese driver is certainly not making it easy. He's not yielding willingly. But as you said earlier, that Mugen engine's got.
Yes, it's not suffering. And look at the size of the rear wing on it as well.
Right. Yes, you can see that the footwork car has got what I call the double-decker rear wing, the normal one with another wing in front of it, because the rules require you. Oh, Prost is through. Now, is Damon Hill going to be able to follow? Suzuki should let him through, and he's done so. This is a real battle. And we're on lap 56. Meantime, with Senna's tyre stop, his lead is down to 17 seconds, but he's up to speed again on new rubber. No problems for him. And Cesaris is the man now in the Tyrrell Yamaha. Prost is through. Now they're up to the S's, and Damon Hill follows through. I didn't think for a moment he'd get through. And in the background was Derek Warwick in the footwork. And they're slicing their way through the field. You can see what it is now to drive in traffic as a Formula One driver. And is it ever a case, Alan, of shutting your eyes and going for it?
Well, sometimes, but really Damon has a harder job than Alain, because the guy looks in his rear view mirror, he knows what a Williams Renault looks like, he moves over and then resumes his racing line and cuts it, so it's a lot more difficult for Damon to come through traffic than it is for Alain.
Well, now he's up to, he being Alain Prost, is up to Carl Bendlinger's Sauber Ilmor, Sauber Mercedes, call it what you will, with the yellow wing mirrors. And Wendlinger is in 7th place behind Martin Brundle, who is still in 6th position in the Ligier. Berger is 5th in the Ferrari. Alesi is 4th in the Ferrari. And we're riding with the 3rd place man, Damon Hill, coming up from the crowded grandstand.
This is going to be interesting now, because Prost is coming out of the right hand, and there's 2 cars in front of him. So even if he does manage to get past the one in front of him, he still has another one, and this could be a good chance for Damon.
Right, well, the one immediately in front, the black car, is the Sauber of Austrian Karl Wendlinger, who is Gerhard Berger's protégé. 4th position in Italy. And you look down, that's the right-hander, Wakefield turn. Up Flinders Street into East Terrace Bend. Round the Market turn, that's Stag turn, the Stag pub.
Now, if he gets in his way through the right-hander onto the straight, and Prost has to come off the accelerator because he's... No, I don't think he's walking all that much, but now he'll get the benefit of a tow from him.
Right, cross through. Is Wendlinger going to let Damon Hill through? Indeed he is. Stays wide. Damon Hill takes the opportunity to close. Right up there is the rear wing of Alain Prost Williams Renault. These on-car cameras are fantastic. We're in the race with Damon Hill and Alain Prost, and Ayrton Senna is on lap 59 out of 79. Prost and Hill are about to start their 59th lap. And it looks to me as though they're coming up to Martin Brundle. I just saw a flag. Oh, that is JJ Leto, and he's done it at the S's.
Doesn't come out in front of anybody.
And mercifully, right, Alan, mercifully, he spun to a standstill without taking anybody with him. That's all too easily done there, a very narrow entrance.
It is. It really does suck you in that corner. It got me today, but he was a very lucky boy not to have lost control on it, because the trouble is there, the entry speed is so quick, and the minute you hit the curb, if the car goes in the air, as we can see now, he's hit that, it's thrown him off. Look at that, he was very, A, lucky not to flipped completely, and B, not to have flown straight across the road into a very unrelenting cement wall.
He very nearly did a Christian Fittipaldi. You'll remember that Fittipaldi at Monza, coming up to try to take a place from Pierluigi Martini, his teammate on the last lap, did a complete 360-degree rotation and got away with it. Well, JJ Leto wasn't quite that, but it was spectacular enough, and it also, again, shows how strong these modern Grand Prix cars are. And we are now on the 60th lap of this 79-lap last Grand Prix of 1993, with Ayrton Senna coming up behind Rubens Barrichello in the sole remaining Jordan, with Eddie Irvine having driven into the wall some way back. And Barrichello is in 12th place. He's been lapped, of course. Now again by Prost, now again by Damon Hill. But I know, Alan, that when you're in Damon Hill's position, you have to think ahead all the time and plan your progress to try to decide where you'll get past the man in front. But of course it's made even more difficult when you're lapping people.
It certainly is. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Formula One is a moving game of chess. I mean, you grab an opportunity when it arises, of course. I mean, if someone opens up a gap or misses a gear or leaves you braking a bit late, you take advantage of that. But all things being equal, you really have to try and work out your passing move 1, 2, even 3 laps before you do it.
So Senna is coming up to 4th place, Jean Alesi in the Ferrari. Senna's hand comes off the steering wheel. I don't know whether it was to make a signal to Jean Alesi or take a rip-off.
Oh, I think he took a rip-off then.
A rip-off, of course, means a transparent, flexible bit over your visor, which you literally rip off when it gets oil or flies. And it's Gerhard Berger that he's coming up to in 5th position. And Alesi, Gerhard Berger's teammate, is in 4th place in the 2nd Ferrari, behind Damon Hill, who is 3rd.
But it's going to be at the end of the straight that Senna will look for some cooperation from Gerhard Berger. Whether he'll get it now, we're going to wait and see. There's certainly too much of a gap for Senna to do anything about it. And remember that his McLaren was slower down the straight this morning by, well, it was some 4 miles an hour. Again, doesn't sound a great deal, but it prevented the gap being reduced.
Well, Ayrton closing the gap on this part of the circuit, but as soon as we put the power down, like you can see here, we see Berger running away from him.
Well, Senna, again, very late on the brakes and trying to get on the throttle very early to use any braking advantage he might have. And Gerhard, I think, with an oil flag there being shown, I think that's more to do with the accident we saw from later. There may be debris on the circuit, bits of bodywork, and certainly a bit of gravel and lots of dust and dirt. Well, Gerhard, looking in his mirror, you can see as his head bends over to the left, he can, out of his peripheral vision, see that Senna is on his tail. He's just sort of playing around a little bit. He's not doing something that is deliberate to slow Senna down. And Senna now closer as they come on to Jones Straight. And I think by the time the end of Brabham Straight arises, he's going to be in position.
He's getting his hand out of the cockpit, John. Senna was. Like Gerhard, you see?
Yep, the hand's out there. I think the gesture was something more than just waving a finger. Well, Gerhard stayed way over to the left. He had his bit of fun and games for the day. He certainly tweaked the tail, not just of Senna, but of McLaren, Williams, Bennett, and everybody else in the pit lane yesterday afternoon when he ran 18 laps in a session where only 12 are permitted. The penalty was a loss of times from the Saturday session, but of course, as it was a hot session and nobody had gone quicker, but Damon Hill certainly showing more than just his nose to teammate Alain Prost. That was the first indication that Damon Hill is getting fed up following his teammate. Maybe Damon thinks he might have a chance not just of winning this Grand Prix, but confirming his place second in the 1993 World Championship for drivers.
Well, if it stays the same, he's not going to get that, and also he's got to finish basically ahead of Ayrton to secure that. Damon running over the curves there, going into that chicane with 17 laps to go in this Australian Grand Prix. Well, Alain Prost
behind, and in 6th position behind Berger is Martin Brundle, 7th is Wendlinger, 8th is Suzuki, 9th is Patrese, in 10th position is Derek Warwick, 11th is Mark Blundell, 12th is Rubens Barrichello, who has been lapped twice, as has Eric Comas, 13th. In 14th position, lapped 3 times, is Andre de Cesaris. 15th is Toshio Suzuki, who has been lapped 4 times, and he is the last runner at the present moment. And Ayrton Senna is now on his 64th lap. 15 laps to go, and he's well through, of course, onto his 64th lap. As second and third placemen, Alain Prost and Damon Hill go through. This is John Alesi in 4th position, and he's coming down to the end of this Jack Brabham straight. And Damon Hill has well and truly shattered the lap record. I said I was confident that it would be going. That's the figure, 1:15.914, and that compares with Schumacher's 1:16.078. So there's a super new lap record for Damon Hill by one watch. Jean Alesi in 4th position.
It's an interesting before that you were mentioning about Senna, Murray. He still holds karting very close to his heart, and he still likes to jump in a kart and have a go when he can, and he's even contemplating building his own go-kart track in Brazil near his property, so he can hop in and have a go when he wants. So he still thinks it's the purest form of motorsport.
Well, he can certainly afford it. I should think his income must have just about matched the national debt of Brazil, which is pretty considerable. And Senna actually doing a bit of curb hopping there. I don't know what went wrong, just a momentary distraction. And he's got the lapping problem again, but it's less of a problem for Ayrton Senna than it is for most people.
Well, when you've got this buffer, you can make a few little mistakes, you can take a few little liberties, and if you drop a second here or drop a second there, it really doesn't matter because he is very, very comfortable. As you can see, he's 18.1 seconds in front of Prost. He's lapping at about the same time anyway, so he's just ruling this race.
Yeah, he's just lapped one of the LaRousses, either Suzuki or Comas. To which it is, because as you can see, they've got very similar helmets, but Toshio Suzuki is only in his 2nd Grand Prix, and there's always a big problem if you're an experienced Grand Prix driver that you'll come up to somebody who is new, who by sheer lack of experience can do the wrong thing at the wrong place and take you off.
Well, that's exactly right, because as you progress through the year, you do 16 Grand Prix, and you learn who you can double guess, and you can learn who you can be cheeky with, who you can take liberties with, and of course, if you don't know the driver in front, you think, well, hang on, now what's he going to do? Should I pass here? In theory, if it was Joe Blow, I could do it. I don't know this character all that well. I'm just going to hang back a bit and look.
Yes, as I remember Alan Jones used to do with Carlos Reutemann.
Absolutely.
So Derek Warwick is still going strong. There is Andre de Cesaris and Mark Blundell, and Blundell in the Ligier and Derek Warwick are fighting for 10th position. So there is the battle for 10th in the background. Derek Warwick in the white and red footwork, crouching down, and it just underlines Derek Warwick's toughness, because he hasn't driven in Australia for 3 years. He spent the whole of Friday in bed with a temperature of about 104, very heavy chest congestion, got into the sauna. Professor Sid Watkins, who is the FISA doctor, said, if you're all right in the morning, I'll let you into the car. Meantime, Christian Fittipaldi was hopping about on one foot, hoping that Derek Warwick wouldn't be all right, in which case he would have taken over his drive in the footwork car. But unfortunately for Christian, and fortunately for Derek, Derek was all right yesterday. Qualified 17th, was 10th fastest in the warm-up this morning, and is now having, as you can see, this battle for 10th position, as Ayrton Senna goes through to lap Mark Blundell for the second time, and Blundell is in 11th place in the blue Ligier. Well, there is no doubt about it. Senna has got this magnificent race-winning rhythm. He's just sailing through the traffic. He's lapping slower than Prost and Hill, but he's on lap 67 now out of 79, just 12 laps to go.
I think Derek Warwick's done an amazingly good job considering the physical condition he's in. I know he's absolutely full of pills. He was up all last night. It's the last thing you want to go into a Grand Prix, particularly a tough one like this where it's a street circuit in his condition, and I think he's going really well.
Yes, Derek Warwick may be one of the older men in Formula One at 39, but he wants to carry on. His heart's in single-seaters. He drove for Peugeot in sports cars last year, and Andrea de Cesaris is holding Ayrton Senna up. We may be having a discussion about that after the race. The blue flag waves at Andrea de Cesaris to say, there is somebody who wants to pass you, my friend, and Senna is the man, and he goes past. And Derek Warwick is now coming up to lap Andrea de Cesaris. But I was saying, Derek wants to stay in Formula One. He was the Peugeot World Sports Car Champion last year and winner of Le Mans, but his heart's in single-seaters. And a lot of people have written him off in Formula One, but I wouldn't be at all surprised if he's not there in 1994. Now, while I've been talking, I've been watching the times, and without jumping up and down too excitedly at the moment, I can tell you that Alain Prost, being pushed very hard indeed by Damon Hill, who is tucked up under his rear wing, is now less than 12 seconds behind Ayrton Senna, who may well be pacing himself to the end.
He may be, but significantly, Prost has done a lap 2.4 seconds quicker than Senna. Now that is a lot. Now, there's not a great deal of distance to go. Senna could be just pacing himself and looking after fuel and tyres, but you'll want to be careful. Of course, traffic. Oh no! On the power, just a little bit too early. He thought he was going to get alongside Prost. He got a little bit excited, put on the accelerator. Look at that tyre too. The front right-hand tyre is starting to have blisters in it. You can just see there on the front right, on the left-hand side of the right-hand tyre, it's breaking up a little bit. He got onto the power a little bit too soon, and the back just broke away. That is a shame because he was really pushing Prost.
Well, you can't blame Damon Hill for trying. He said yesterday. Well, he went off yesterday, but he actually had a chance. Here it is, the replay. Take us through it, Alan.
Yeah, well, he's much tighter line and not an ideal racing line. He decreased the apex of the corner, so therefore he was on a harder lock than what he would normally be. He's jumped onto the accelerator to try and get alongside, but because his front wheels were turned in more than what they would normally be, the back's come out on him.
Well, you can't blame him for trying. He could see an opportunity to get through and take second place yet again, having already done so 4 times this year, and he tried just that little bit too hard. Well, I think that's blown second position in Australia for him, because we're on lap 69 now, and Prost, incidentally, has not cut any further. Here's a replay.
You see, he's on the inside. Now, he should be way out to the left, but he's on the inside. He's got alongside him. He said, right now I'm going to try and out-drag him into the next left-hand. He's given it to Welly too much. Bang.
Well, Prost was lucky that Hill did not hit him, and Hill was lucky that he didn't hit the wall, because at least he was able to get going again. And such was his lead over Jean Alesi's Ferrari, Hill in 3rd position and Alesi in 4th position, that Hill is still 3rd. So it looks like Williams 2nd and 3rd, another win for McLaren to make their 5th of the year, the second highest behind with the Williams-Renault team, for whom Prost as an individual has won 7 Grand Prix and Damon Hill 3, making 10 in all. But I certainly wouldn't have put any money on McLaren winning 5 Grand Prix when 1993 began. They've done a fantastic job.
They certainly have, when you consider that they went into perhaps the first quarter to half of this season with a Ford engine that perhaps wasn't as powerful as Schumacher's. So he's been able to do that. Then, of course, when he had the more powerful version later on in the year, he's really and truly made the best use of it.
We're with 9th placed Riccardo Patrese now, who is closing on 8th position Aguri Suzuki in the footwork Mugen, and Suzuki actually is quite well known for tiring in the race. Derek Warwick now has got Alain Prost breathing under his rear wing, looking to go through and lap the Englishman again. Derek Warwick, who is in 10th position. And Senna is into the 70s in terms of laps now. He's on lap 71 in the 79-lap Australian Grand Prix as Alain Prost goes through. And Prost was 2 seconds, over 2 seconds, 2.5 seconds slower than Senna on that lap. And you can see the reason. Prost has had to get involved with the traffic of Derek Warwick and Mark Blundell there, battling for 10th position and the order on the 71st lap, with 8 to go, including the one they are on. Senna leads Prost by 15 seconds. Prost is now 20 seconds ahead of Hill after Hill's spin. In 4th position behind the Williams are the two Ferraris, Alesi, and then the Ferrari of Berger 5th. Martin Brundle is still in 6th position, another point for the Ligier team, who actually are not going to achieve their target of 30 points this year. They'll have 23 if Brundle finishes where he is. 7th a lap behind is Wendlinger, 8th is Suzuki, battling with Derek Warwick. Riccardo Patrese is in 10th position, Mark Blundell is 11th, Barrichello is in 12th position, and now Senna, that you're looking at through the S's, driving smoothly and inexorably is on his 72nd lap. And it's not just a potential victory for McLaren, of course, it is a potential 5th victory for the Ford Cosworth V8, a very handy little engine.
It's quite an interesting story when Senna phoned up Ron Dennis and said, look, I just thought I'd ring you up and confirm I've actually signed to go with Williams. Dennis paused for a couple of seconds and said, oh, well, okay, well, I guess I'd better tell you that I've just signed for Peugeot.
Yeah, and Peugeot, of course, having won everything in sports car racing, have taken a big gamble and made a very determined move to get into Grand Prix racing against their more experienced Renault colleagues or rivals, because it'll be a head-to-head confrontation between the two French concerns, with Riccardo Patrese swarming all over Aguri Suzuki looking for 8th position. And watch this and I'll tell you that if McLaren win today with Ayrton Senna at the wheel, it will probably be the best and the most emotional present that the Brazilian could give the team that he is leaving, because it would mean that McLaren would have won 104 Grand Prix to break the record, which is jointly held by themselves and Ferrari, 103 Grand Prix victories. But, of course, McLaren have Ferrari have driven in many more Grand Prix than McLaren have. Off the top of my head, it's something like 500 for Ferrari in terms of all their drivers, and about 390 odd for McLaren. So McLaren, I've just got the figures. It's Ferrari 520, McLaren 393 so far. So if McLaren can have won 104 out of the 394 with this race, it's a superb achievement to make them the greatest Grand Prix team of all time in terms of victories. Lap 73, 6 to go. Ayrton Senna leads Prost by 15 seconds, who leads Hill by 23 seconds, who leads Alesi by 33 seconds, who leads Berger in 5th place by 13 seconds, who leads Brundle in 6th position by 34 seconds, and in 7th place it's Wendlinger, 8th Suzuki, 9th Patrese, 10th Blundell, but there's a lot of action there. Derek Warwick is 2 laps back in 11th place, ahead of Barrichello, 12th, who is 3 laps back. So it really does look as though, with just those few laps to go, things are set. I can't see, frankly, anybody in the top 6 catching the man in front and getting through and improving his place.
No, not at all, Murray. As I said before, Senna is totally controlling this race. He's doing it easy, and going out to pass
Andre de
Chedras, brave move through there. But no, I mean, he's totally controlling this race, and he's going to win it at his leisure. All Damon can do now is just drive and enjoy himself, and maybe try and go for the quickest lap of the race.
And it means, of course, that McLaren will not only have got a record number of Grand Prix victories with 104, but they will very much have consolidated their second place in the Constructors' World Championship. It was nip and tuck between them and Benetton, who had been alternating for second place for some time. Benetton moved ahead for a while, and then at the last Grand Prix in Japan, McLaren took that second Constructors' Championship place from the Enstone team, Enstone, which is the headquarters of Benetton, and Senna will finish second in the World Championship. I don't think he's going to be throwing his hat up in the air and cheering about that. There's only one place that interests Ayrton Senna in the World Championship, and that is a win, of course, particularly as his arch rival Alain Prost has now won more championships than he has. This is lap 75, and that is Damon Hill dealing with the traffic. I don't think Damon Hill, who is now up with the battle between Derek Warwick's footwork and the Larousse Lamborghini of Eric Comas, and Derek Warwick is actually just checking, but I'm pretty sure he's a lap ahead of Comas. No, he's actually on the same lap, so it is a battle for 11th position between Derek Warwick in the white and red car, Comas in the yellow, red and blue one, the Larousse Lamborghini, and they are both, of course, holding up the Williams Renault.
Yes, you'll see the superiority of that Renault power down the straight, though. Look, he'll get by the two of these before he gets to the right-hander at the end of the straight.
And Comas looks to follow him through, but oh no, you don't, my friends, says the very experienced Derek Warwick, and just moves his car half a width across, and that's all you need. You see, you can look at that circuit, and you can say that's a very wide circuit in relation to the width of the car. Hello, who's this? Oh, it's Wendlinger doing what his teammate JJ Leto did.
Seems to be a Sauber problem there.
But getting away with it. I was saying the circuit looks very wide in relation to the car, but the racing line is only one line, and if you're on the racing line, it means that the chap behind you finds it virtually impossible to get past unless he's got so much grunt that he can just drive past, and that ain't possible these days.
Well, that's not the case in Formula One. There is only one optimum line around any circuit in the world, and that is the correct line to take. And these cars are so fairly even in their cornering abilities, it's virtually impossible, obviously, to go around the outside. So the track, whilst it appears to be wide, tends to get very narrow very quickly if you start going offline. And particularly as the race progresses, you get what they call the marbles, which is the bits of rubber coming off the tyre offline. And if you get onto that, it's almost the equivalent of hitting oil.
Well, Ayrton Senna must be metaphorically counting the Australian dollars, of which he will get quite a few in a few minutes' time, because he is on his 77th lap out of a short distance of 79, thanks to the peculiar start situation we have with two aborted starts. And he is now 14 seconds ahead of a faster Alain Prost. But Prost is only about a second and a lap faster, and 14 seconds with 2 laps to go means that Senna has really got it made unless something dreadful happens to the car. He goes past Jean Alesi now, so it looks like there are only going to be 3 men that go the full race distance. Ayrton Senna, race leader, 3-time world champion, is on his way to making it 35 Grand Prix victories, and to finish his McLaren career with Ford this year, with Honda in the past, on the highest possible note, and to take a supreme reputation to his new Williams Renault team for 1994, where he's going to be partnered by Damon Hill. So he's on lap 78, just this one and the next one to go, and he's got a commanding lead over Alain Prost. Nothing is going to stop the Brazilian except a car problem, because Senna is far too experienced to put a wheel wrong at this stage of the race. 13.2 seconds is his lead over Alain Prost, who is now also on his 78th lap out of 79. And waiting for Damon Hill to go through in 3rd position ahead of the 2 Ferraris of Jean Alesi and Gerhard Berger. Hill is 28 seconds behind Alain Prost. He's once again the fastest man on the track, He's some 2 seconds a lap faster than Senna. He's almost 2 seconds a lap faster than Alain Prost. This is Alain Prost. But Prost must have hoped to go out on the high note, winning his last Grand Prix, his 199th Grand Prix, but it was apparently not to be.
Well, nevertheless, Murray, a fantastic record. I mean, the man has raced 199 times, won 51 times. He's had 33 poles. He was 4 times champion, won in 85, 86, 89, 93, and he's had 41 fastest laps. I mean, it's not a bad record to be going out on.
And he is now into his last lap, as of course is Ayrton Senna, now 12 seconds ahead of Prost. So I won't say that Senna is contemptuously slowing down, because that's the last thing I'd accuse him of. But he's making very, very sure. There he is. He's on his last lap. And as I've said already several times this afternoon, Senna has given us a magnificent demonstration of how to go motor racing today. His tactics have been superb. His driving has been magnificent. He's had the right tool for the job, and you can see how close the 2 Ferraris are behind him. So it's a bit of a battle for 4th position between Jorna Lacey, who is 4th, and Gerhard Berger, who is 5th. And Berger will know that it's the last lap, so watch them, as well as Ayrton Senna, who is nearly home to win the last Grand Prix of 1993. A magnificent achievement for him, for McLaren and for Ford. And Ayrton Senna wins in Australia to the delight of his fans. Glenn Dix, as ever, performs contortions on the line with the checkered flag. Alain Prost finishes in 2nd place, nearly collected by the checkered flag of Glenn Dix, and now here is Damon Hill. Well, Damon Hill has already had 2 third places this year. He's going to be pushed down to 3rd place in the World Championship as a result of the win of Ayrton Senna. But Damon Hill can hold his head very high indeed at the end of a magnificent first full Grand Prix season. And Ayrton Senna, if he stays true to form, will be looking for a Brazilian flag somewhere around the circuit. He's looking, you see, he's looking now. There's one, he'll help you out, mate.
That could be a little difficult for him to get.
But I think, mate, he's probably about 5 rows up in the grandstand. But Ayrton Senna, who is a very, very fierce patriot, a staunch Brazilian, always likes to drive home waving his national flag. It looks as though he's not going to be able to do it in Australia. But there are plenty of fans of this great, great driver here in Adelaide, as Alain Prost respectfully pulls up behind the race winner's car. Yes, I've won, folks. And in 3rd position, Damon Hill. 4th is Lacey. In 5th position, Gerhard Berger. So both the Ferraris are home, as are both the Williams. And a super 6th position and another World Championship point for Englishman Martin Brundle and for his Ligier team.
What a classy win there for Ayrton Senna, and Ron Dennis, the team manager. He must feel, boy, I wish I had him back next year. He finally got his flag. We will be back at the Adelaide Grand Prix after this.
Did get fastest lap here, a new lap record, 1:15.381. It's Jean Alesi in 4th, Gerhard Berger in 5th.
Well, I think he might have switched the traction control off for that little maneuver, and that is just an example of the joy that Senna is feeling. And Damon Hill, I think, has tried to do something similar, but not maybe quite so successfully. And I don't know what Damon is actually attempting to do down at the end of the Brabham Straight, but I think he might have finally stalled his engine, and he's looking to be pushed back. Maybe he just isn't able to select reverse gear.
He's given his sponsor some coverage there.
Well, there's no better way to give them a sponsor the coverage than to win a Grand Prix. And there the crowd, appreciative of a Grand Prix which maybe didn't produce action at the front, but there was always the sense that something could happen. Traffic, of course, here in Adelaide, again playing a significant part in the outcome of a race. Decisions on tyres kept very closely guarded secrets by all the teams, and Senna's joy mounting as he comes down pit lane. And Well, there will be an almighty celebration tonight with Ayrton Senna, Ron Dennis, the entire McLaren team, and, well, 6 years of partnership, and it has been a partnership in which at times there's been strong differences of opinion. The two toughest guys I've ever met in motor racing are Ron Dennis and Senna. It's like the difference between a rock and a hard place. And now I wonder, will there be an acknowledgement from Alain Prost to Ayrton Senna, or are they going to continue the differences they have?
I wonder what he's thinking at the moment.
Well, Ron Dennis, the first man to get to Senna, and there will be a genuine sadness that this partnership is over. And I wonder whether if they could put the clock back 3 months and say, well, am I doing the right thing, Ron? Do you think so? Or Ron might say to Ayrton, are you sure you've done the right thing, Ayrton? You know you said we'll meet again next year. And Alain Prost, undoubtedly disappointed that his final Grand Prix did not end on the winner's podium, looking around the back of the car.
Very lonely.
Yes, he is. He is indeed.
On his own, thinking about his very last Formula One race. Alain Prost, Le Professeur, and there is an emotional Ayrton Senna. Well, Damon's being pushed into the garage. I think he finally stalled that engine, actually.
Yep, it looked like it down at the hairpin bend at the end of Brabham Straight. Well, it's all part of an education for Damon. He certainly indicated at three-quarter distance that he was capable of running quicker than Alain. And I just wonder maybe that, well, Ron Dennis walking over and saying well done to his.
Back in Adelaide, and this is Ayrton Senna, the winner of the 1993 Australian Grand Prix. Alan Jones joins me now. When they came back into the sheds there, Alan, is noticeable that Ayrton Senna did not acknowledge Alain Prost, and Alain Prost did not acknowledge Ayrton Senna. We're yet to see it.
Oh, here we go. As you talk, see, they just shook hands. They've kissed and made up.
That's taken a fair while, actually. I mean, they were within arm's length there for about 2 or 3 minutes, and finally they got together. But what an impressive win by Ayrton Senna, and Ron Dennis there. He must be ruining the fact that he's losing for next season.
There's Joe Ramirez with him. He's another fellow Brazilian, and he's been with the McLaren team for many, many years, so he'll be quite emotional. Yeah, it is. I mean, the 6 years with the team, it's a long time, and he would have forged a lot of good friendships and camaraderie with most of the team, and to be leaving them and going to another team, you know, it's emotional. But on the other hand, I guess there's one very happy chappie there, and that's Frank Williams, because he's going to get him.
Here we are, peeling off a bit of the rubber. What's this all about, Alan?
Well, you can see the little holes. They're actually peeling off there, so they're going to measure how much tread the tyre has used, and they will put that into their data. So on the cool-down lap, there's a lot of pickup. So he's scraping that pickup off so he can get his gauge to put into the holes to measure how much rubber has worn off during the race. And they'll put that in so for next year when they come back, they know exactly what's happening with the tyres.
Rightio, here we are, the tremendous crowd that's out in front there for Ayrton Senna, the winner of the Grand Prix, his national.
Yeah, it's sad because, you know, you can say what you like about Alain. He's very political and he does a lot of his racing out of the cockpit in terms of who he wants to be in the team with him and so forth. But at the end of the day, he has got the figures behind him to back up what a great driver he was. I mean, you just don't win that many Grand Prix and have that many pole positions and 4 World Championships if you're no good.
Damon Hill, how do you judge his drive today?
I think he made a couple of little fundamental mistakes, which shows that perhaps a little bit of inexperience still. I mean, I think he just got maybe a little bit overexcited when he got beside Alain Prost and thought, well, hang on, this is my big chance now, and he jumped on the loud pedal a little bit sooner than what he should have and paid the consequences. The back broke away.
Look at this. This is nice to see. I thought it would be a long time waiting to see Ayrton Senna or Alain Prost smiling on one another and sharing the #1 spot.
Well, Ken, I might be cynical, but Alain is going into the media next year, and there's probably a very good chance you might have to do the odd interview with Ayrton.
Well, here goes the Moe, and they're ducking and weaving all over the place, much like they did on the racetrack. And this is all, as Jackie said earlier in the day, the traditional